your favourite curry is. Fire up the Deliveroo app and find your food freedom in West London today.
And there's no word on their conditions. Police in Kansas City, Missouri say at least 2 people are dead there, upwards of a dozen people injured in a late-night shooting, as we hear from Jeff McKay.
According to police, a group of people were waiting to get into a local bar at about 11:30 Sunday night when the suspect started shooting into the crowd. Police don't know why that suspect opened fire. A woman died in the parking lot. The shooter was killed, shot by an armed security guard. At least 15 others were hurt, 3 in critical condition, taken to area hospitals.
And the search for a suspect continues after 2 people were killed and 5 others injured following a shooting during a concert at a San Antonio club. The San Francisco 49ers are in the Super Bowl for the first time in 7 years, cruising to a 37-20 win over the Green Bay Packers. I'm Michael Toscano.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. U.S. financial markets are observing the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. International markets are trading on this Monday. We'll check the numbers in a moment. British defense contractor BAE Systems snapped up more than $2 billion in U.S. defense technology assets that Raytheon and United Technologies were forced to sell in order to gain antitrust approval for their merger. BAE said Monday that it will buy the military global positioning system arm of UTC's Collins Aerospace unit for $1.9 billion and Raytheon's airborne tactical radios operation at a cost of $275 million. Defense lawyers argue a senior executive of the Chinese tech giant Huawei should not be extradited to the U.S. because her actions would not be considered crimes under Canadian law. Bloomberg's Susanna Palmer takes a look.
The extradition hearing for Huawei Chief Financial Officer Meng Wanzhou is set to begin today. Meng, the daughter of Huawei's founder, was arrested in Canada and faces charges of committing fraud to try and evade U.S. sanctions on Iran. Last week, the Canadian Department of Justice released documents supporting its case that the allegations against Meng do meet an extradition test, making them criminal under Canadian law. Defense lawyers dispute that claim, arguing it's not illegal in Canada to do business with Iran. Susanna Palmer, Bloomberg Radio.
Deloitte's annual readiness report shows that corporate executives are increasingly concerned about environmental issues and see them as threats to their business operations. The report is based on a survey of more than 2,000 global managers and public sector leaders. Checking the numbers, London's FTSE is down 0.4%, the DAX in Germany up by a fraction, the Nikkei in Japan finished higher by 0.2%, the Hang Seng in Hong Kong off 0.9%. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
You're listening to Bloomberg Best on Bloomberg Radio.
I'm Denise Pellegrini. And we continue our conversation with Alan Greenspan. Bloomberg surveillance host Tom Keene asked the former Fed chair about what he sees as the dying tradition of bipartisanship.
I'm a Republican. Reagan Republican, if you want to be exact.
Okay.
Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the senator from New York, a Democrat, was my favorite senator up until the day he died and since. It's a different world. I remember speaking to people like Hubert Humphrey and like when he was running for president. You know, I said to him, I said, look, I'm not going to vote for you. I had the audacity to say such things. I say, but you know, if you get elected president of this country, I'm not sure we're going to be in any worse shape, and we may well be in better shape.
Well, within that, and since we're speaking of another time and place, I love this quote, again, this is from David Leonhardt of the New York Times, of course, from his wonderful review of a book on, I'm afraid to say this, 13 years ago, The Age of Turbulence. Alan Greenspan and Gerald Ford, he always understood what he knew and what he didn't know. What happened to our modern politicians where they don't have the humility of the gentleman from Michigan?
It's the ones who are voted in. I mean, for example, Moynihan being the classic case in point, it's exactly the same issue that you have to go back to the electorate and say, whom are you voting to run the country? And we're getting quality which requires a significant improvement and an ability to talk across the aisle, so to speak. I mean, there are large numbers of Republicans and Democrats extraordinarily adept at governance, and the difficulty is they're in the minority or don't get second terms or things of that nature. So it's a very deep-seated quality that goes back to the roots of our system. I'm glad we're talking about the Constitution, because it would be very helpful if a lot more people went back and read some of the stuff that the founding fathers of this country wrote and commented on. The conceptual level is really fascinating.
Within the amendment over the years, and I think of George Will's book last year, hearkening back to those times, then we come up to crises along the way, whether it was the panic of, I think it was 1872, or we go to the panic of 1907 and the advent of the Federal Reserve System. Are we at a fragility now, even with our supposed good economic growth? Are we at a point now of institutional crisis like what we confronted in 1907?
Well, 1907 was a massive economic collapse. It wasn't the worst that we've had by any means, but it was the roots of the Federal Reserve, because it set in motion in 1913 the Federal Reserve Act. It came essentially out of that turmoil. But what we need to do now is to recognize, how do we have a system which works, which creates Hamiltons and Jeffersons and Washingtons? We don't have that today.
My colleague Michael McKee has a very simple question with his excellence in economics, and he just simply says, where's the inflation? Where is the inflation today? I mean, we're having a big argument about the new regime of the Fed and where Fed thinking's going. Should 2% go to here? 2%? Evans of Chicago says inflation higher. Forget about all the debates, and I know you don't want to talk about individual Fed officials. Where's the inflation today?
Well, the problem basically is that is not the question. The question basically, what the forecasts of the monetary authorities are with respect to inflation, or with respect to economic growth, and any of the other things that are involved, is a secondary question. To be sure, a critical requirement of a governor of the Federal Reserve is to be a good economic forecaster. In fact, I remember back when I started at the Fed, I recognized that the only particular skill I could bring to the table was I had a real understanding of how the economy worked and how the data system worked. And I found that very useful in making my judgments, not the rest of the board, of how I thought the system ought to be moving.
You've been listening to former Fed Chair Alan Greenspan with Bloomberg Surveillance host Tom Keene. And coming up, Greenspan's insight into central bank decision-making. If you have a Bloomberg terminal, you can see all the Bloomberg Best stories at Best Go. You're listening to Bloomberg Best.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know, because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/.
Imagine your perfect wedding day, surrounded by stunning parkland on the iconic Goodwood estate. Choose between 3 spectacular venues, from the Regency splendor of Goodwood House to the contemporary luxury of the Goodwood Hotel, or the irresistible style and charm of the Kennels. Why don't you come and see for yourself? Book a show round with our Goodwood Weddings team today. Visit goodwood.com. Only at Goodwood.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Boredom. Fitness enemy #1. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it. Add a boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
What if your email was organised by project and not by date? What if everyone looked at the same thing instead of their own inbox? Then it wouldn't be email at all. Forget your fragmented, jumbled inbox and make the change to channels in Slack. Spaces dedicated to individual projects, topics, or teams. All your communication is neatly organised and everyone is on the same page. Slack. Choose a better way to work. Get started at slack.com.
Dad, I'm doing the mashed potatoes too.
Do the Albert Bartlett potato mash.
Do the twist.
Do the patatas bravas with a British twist.
Yeah. Do the brown sauce, balsamic and chutney.
Oh, do the melting potato slices.
Do the dishes.
Grab a brand new recyclable bag today and do the Albert Bartlett.
He's got a brand new bag.
Hard Megxit or soft Megxit? Have Harry and Meghan misjudged public feeling? And what does their departure mean for the future of the monarchy? With questions mounting, turn to The Telegraph for answers. Subscribe today at telegraph.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Hello, I'm here at the Race for Life Pretty Muddy with Great Britain's Jayanti Kaur. Jayanti, do you have a message for the millions tuned in at home?
What are you talking about? Millions of people aren't tuning in to witness me doing a muddy obstacle course.
Well, they absolutely should, Jayanti. You're a remarkable athlete.
I'm a geography teacher.
We're not athletes, we're cancer beaters. Sign up to Race for Life now and get 30% off entry until the 31st of January in partnership with Tesco.
Listening to Bloomberg Radio. A reminder, Michael Bloomberg, a Democratic presidential candidate, is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, parent of Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update. Now the news.
A violent weekend. Honolulu mourning the loss of police officers Tiffany Enriquez and a 7-year veteran, and Kaluki Kalama, a 9-year veteran, allegedly shot by a man with a history of run-ins with police. The suspect and 2 women were in a house that burned, and there's no word on their conditions. Police in Kansas City, Missouri say at least 2 people are dead there, upwards of a dozen people injured in a late-night shooting, as we hear from Jeff McKay.
According to police, a group of people were waiting to get into a local bar at about 11:30 Sunday night when the suspect started shooting into the crowd. Police don't know why that suspect opened fire. A woman died in the parking lot. The shooter was killed, shot by an armed security guard. At least 15 others were hurt, 3 in critical condition, taken to area hospitals.
And the search for a suspect continues after 2 people were killed and 5 others injured following a shooting during a concert at a San Antonio club. The San Francisco 49ers are in the Super Bowl for the first time in 7 years, cruising to a 37-20 win over the Green Bay Packers. I'm Michael Toscano.
This is Bloomberg Best. I'm Denise Pellegrini. And we continue our deep dive into the mind of Alan Greenspan. Tom Keene, host of Bloomberg Surveillance, asked the former Fed chair what he thinks about the makeup and effectiveness of the modern central bank.
There is a pretty simple consensus of what constitutes stability. The issue, whether it's 2%, 2.5%, or whatever, there's no disagreement on how a market economy, which is what we all function with, is supposed to manage itself. To the extent that we fail in our management, the system will suffer. To the extent we make progress through insights, it will improve. We will never forecast it any more than we will ever be able to forecast the future. Since Nostradamus, of course, we could. You can't have perfect monetary policy because we can never have perfect forecasts. But we can do the best that we can, come to judgments which over the years have not been bad to the Fed. I think the Fed's performance has been fairly good, and I think the Bank of England has been good. The Bundesbank has been hugely controlling of a lot that goes on in Europe generally. I mean, these are professional people who do a professional job. Is it 100%?
How do you respond to the idea that these elites are creating a policy for elites and that they've left behind so many when we look at income inequality and wealth inequality?
Well, just remember, if you're a banker and you're serving your customers, you're going to find out that the amount of money each customer has is different. And that are you going to do this customer or this customer? Depends. You are required as a banker to do the best for the institution as a whole, and that will cause an obvious bias towards those who have larger funds. It's good business. It may not be good politics, but banking is not a social fund.
I'm fascinated by your thoughts on the European experiment. Your generation had to pick up the pieces out of World War II. There was leadership from Konrad Adenauer and others to put back together a Europe. And the miracle was how quickly it seemed to come back together over 10 years or so. There's been a European monetary experience. There's been somewhat of a fiscal union, banking union, but it's been clumsy the whole way. Do you worry that Europe will have its experiment fall apart, or are you a European optimist?
Well, I am worried about something which very few people focus on. It's a clearing system for all central banks in the Euro system. At the close of business every day, you would expect it's 0-0, and which is what a clearing system does. At the moment, and for the most recent years, the Deutsche Bundesbank has held 2/3 of the aggregate claims. The net debtors have been Italy and Spain and a few others, but it's an unbalanced system in which it's too much German control, and it's hung together well because the people who run the Bundesbank know that they have to be very careful about how they distribute funds and the like, because it could be damaging to everybody. But the European system is, which as you correctly point out, came together. The fact when you look at some of the institutions that came out of World War II, in which Germany is a key factor, when Germany was the key person or persons that we were fighting against. And it was a remarkably short period of time. And to say that Germany was able to change as much as it has, and which came as a great surprise to a lot of people. But Germany has been very effective in financially leading the Euro area, I should say. Britain obviously is outside. I think that they've done things extraordinarily well, but I am concerned that the system itself is too large. And let's give you a case in point. Not only do the Germans fund Southern Europe, but when you look at the trade data, Germany is a net financial exporter to Southern Europe. So is Luxembourg, incidentally, which is the only other major one. And that's telling you got a system which it's out of balance when there's no political control over the whole system.
Okay, there's no political control, but is it because they are using one currency? I mean, has the one currency experiment failed for Europe and has led to those huge imbalances financially?
Well, I'm not sure. It's January 1st, 1990, when the euro, I was one of the members involved in discussing that in the G7, and I thought that the euro was a terrible idea, and for a lot of reasons. I was wrong. They really created a fascinatingly functioning system, so that I remember I got up in a meeting in the Banque de France to my good friend, many good friends. I said, I want to express my apologies. I was wrong on this. My trouble is I'm not sure I was.
Well, let me turn with one final topic. And, of course, this is the letter you wrote last year with Paul Volcker. And, of course, our Christine Harper writing a final book with Paul Volcker. Tell us about the Paul Volcker. I have here in my notes, the wonderful preparation that they did here that day in June of 1987. Of course, no one saw a crisis coming at the time. And there's the New York Times headline, Volcker out after 8 years as Fed Reserve Chief. Reagan chooses Greenspan. That's sort of a terse headline as hell. What was that day like where there was a shift from Volcker? What was that shift like from Volcker to Greenspan?
Well, my view was that he was the most effective Federal Reserve chairman in the history of the Federal Reserve. And my view is that what he went through to get the inflation under control, and that I said, I will do everything I can to maintain the Volcker procedures and what he did. And I thought we were successful in doing that. But you have to make a difference between the person who started it and those of us who went on. and sort of did what was required. The funniest thing is that one of the things we did when I was first here is we had a reason to increase the interest rates, and it was basically a straightforward, ordinary thing. This is about 2-3 weeks into my term. I get a note from Paul and says, "Today you are a central banker."
Tell us about your legacy. We can look at the data capture you did before being Fed chairman. We can look, as you say, as the responsibility of bringing forward the Volcker Revolution. And then there's all the challenges of the crisis, the critics, and, the blow-ups here and the blow-ups here. What would you like your legacy to be, or how would you like your legacy to be framed?
You're speaking to a biased person on this issue. I would say basically that I brought economic analysis in a way that was different from what has been historically, and I think it exists to this day. I don't say that I generated it, but I was certainly involved. You can't be there for almost 19 years without having an awful lot of effect. So I'm proud of what I did. I'm acutely aware of the mistakes that I made. And I said, could I have done otherwise? And I said, no. Unless you become a superhuman being. I used to look for my briefcase indicator, which I thought was a hilarity. And I said, I would say at some point, they should understand that the profound wisdom that's in there is my wife prepared my lunch.
And you've been listening to former Fed Chair Alan Greenspan with Tom Keene, host of Bloomberg Surveillance. And that's it for Bloomberg Best. If you have a Bloomberg terminal, you can see all the Bloomberg Best stories at Best Go. I'm Denise Pellegrini. This is Bloomberg.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run. Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up, lift. Mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run. Mix it at a boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run.
Mix it. Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June. featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA On Demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
At Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now a global news update.
Officers down. Award surprise. I'm Michael Toscano. Honolulu, Hawaii, mourning the loss of 2 police officers gunned down by a man police say had a history of run-ins with police. Honolulu PD Chief Susan Ballard.
I'm deeply saddened to report the tragic loss of 2 of HPD's finest in a senseless and selfish act. On behalf of the men and women of the Honolulu Police Department, our deepest condolences go out to the families of Officers Tiffany Enriquez and Kauliki Kalama.
The suspect believed to be in a house that burned. No word on his condition. Police in Kansas City, Missouri say at least 2 people are dead, including the shooter. Upwards of a dozen people injured in a late-night shooting outside of a bar last night. And the search for a suspect continues after 2 people were killed, 5 others injured following a shooting during a concert at a club in San Antonio. A state of emergency in Virginia ahead of today's annual gun rights event at the state capitol with credible threats of violence by militia and white supremacy groups. Second Amendment lawyer Tim Anderson.
This started back in November. We peacefully demonstrated throughout the Commonwealth, and what if anything bad comes up, I hope that the world understands that it's not Virginia gun owners that are causing this. It is the same kind of terrorist organizations that have caused unrest in other places.
Joaquin Phoenix takes Best Actor for The Joker at last night's Screen Actors Guild Awards. Renee Zellweger wins Best Actress in a movie for playing Judy Garland.
I'm just so grateful and for the privilege of reflecting on the life of one of our own and most beloved.
And Jim Roop tells us there was a big surprise.
Parasite, the South Korean film, a foreign language film, makes history. The top prize, Outstanding Cast, which is the equivalent of a Best Picture award.
The San Francisco 49ers are in the Super Bowl for the first time in 7 years after cruising to a 37-20 win over the Green Bay Packers. I'm Michael Toscano.
Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, overdesigned, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Obsessing over every detail means we're confident in offering a 100% quality guarantee. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try with this special offer. Get a Harry's starter set with a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, shave gel, and a travel cover. All for just $3 plus free shipping. Just go to harrys.com and enter 6655 at checkout. That's harrys.com, code 6655. Enjoy.
With a look at Holiday Monday Morning Money, let's turn to business reporter Jessica Ettinger.
On this Martin Luther King Day holiday, Wall Street is quiet. The financial markets are closed today. Most banks are closed as well. Companies whose shares hit fresh all-time highs in Friday's session include Google parent Alphabet, Hilton, Nike, and Coca-Cola. Well, stocks are at record highs, and it's all about earnings reports, so they're going to be really important this week. In fact, keep an eye on American Airlines and Southwest, which each report later in the week. They've been impacted by the grounded Boeing 737 MAX jets. They planned on having those new planes for flights this spring and summer. On this week's watch list, the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. President Trump will be there. Earnings that could move markets are coming from United Airlines, IBM, Capital One, UBS, and Netflix.
Thanks, Jess. Asian markets closed mixed in their Monday trading. European markets also mixed this hour. I'm Michael Toscano.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. This newscast is brought to you by IBKR, the professionals' gateway to the world's markets. Their clients enjoy lowest cost access to stocks, options, futures, Forex, and fixed income from a single integrated account. Learn more at IBKR.com. U.S. financial markets are closed for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. International exchanges are open, with Europe mostly lower and Asia closing mixed. The FTSE 100 in London down 0.4%. The DAX in Germany up by a fraction. The CAC 40 in Paris off 0.25%. The Nikkei in Japan closed up 0.2%. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong finished down 0.9%. Philip Hildebrand, vice chairman at BlackRock, looks for global growth in 2020 driven by central bank monetary policy.
I think globally the big story is this extraordinary pivot by central banks in 2019. 63 central banks eased monetary policy. So this gives a real lift. You can see this in financial conditions. They're very easy. Judging by looking at financial conditions, we should see growth edging up.
Hildebrand spoke with Bloomberg Television at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. J.P. Morgan Chase is buying the former BNP Paribas offices in central Paris, with space to house as many as 450 employees, as banks seek to bolster their footprint in the European Union after Brexit. And J.P. Morgan strategists believe analysts are starting 2020 with an overly negative outlook on earnings and say positive surprises will give a boost to global equities. In a note out this morning, J.P. Morgan says forecasts for the S&P 500's earnings growth over the next two reporting seasons are below those seen in the second and third quarters of last year and are likely too low. Oil up 0.5% on Monday on supply disruptions in Iraq and Libya. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Law.
Some complicated international law issues here. What kind of docket is Chief Justice Roberts facing?
Interviews with prominent attorneys and Bloomberg legal experts.
Joining me is Bloomberg News Supreme Court reporter Greg Storr. Neil Devon's a professor at William & Mary Law School.
And analysis of important legal issues, cases, and headlines.
President Trump lost resoundingly in the circuit courts, an unusually large number of immigration cases.
Bloomberg Law with June Grosso from Bloomberg Radio.
Welcome to Bloomberg Law. I'm June Grosso. Ahead in this hour, President Trump seems to be winning his legal battle over the wall, at least for now. And expect more privacy lawsuits this year, with Facebook's high court fights leading the way. President Trump's planned U.S. border wall with Mexico got another boost after a federal appeals court lifted an order that had blocked his use of $3.6 billion in military construction funds. Joining me is Leon Fresco, a partner at Holland & Knight. So, Leon, what did the Fifth Circuit decide?
Well, what the Fifth Circuit decided was the district court had issued a stay preventing, or had issued an injunction rather, preventing the construction of the border wall from occurring because the county and the state of, and the city of El Paso was going to be harmed by the fact that military construction money that was scheduled to go to Fort Bliss was going to be instead spent on the border wall. And so the court had enjoined that construction of the border wall and that diversion of funding on the basis that it violated the appropriations law that Congress had passed. What the Fifth Circuit did was it issued a stay of that injunction, meaning it said that the injunction basically doesn't exist, meaning that the president can move forward and build the wall and divert the money for building the wall while the case remains pending. It may happen that later some other court ultimately says, no, you can't build the wall. But what the court says here is that there isn't a likelihood that the plaintiffs, El Paso, will succeed in this case. And so because of that, there's no need to have an injunction. And so because of that, the building of the wall should continue.
So this was a split decision, 2-1. What did the dissenting judge say?
The dissenting judge said that although he agreed that the case presented a substantial case on the merits, which was a very serious case, that the government had shown, the El Paso government had shown that there was a likelihood that it would succeed, and that the government, the federal government, hadn't shown that there would be irreparable harm that justified a stay, meaning that because the wall had never been built in the history of America, why is there suddenly an emergency that a wall needs to be built right now? And so because this irreparable harm hadn't been shown, there was no reason to stay the injunction while the case was pending. Instead, the case should have gone to its conclusion, and if the government, the federal government, had won in the end, then the wall should have been allowed to have been built.
lower courts in both Texas and California issued stays. Why is the circuit court coming out differently?
So there was two transferring of funds that occurred. One was a transferring of funds of a couple of $1 billion in what was called counter-narcotics money, and that had been enjoined both in California and in Texas, and the Supreme Court said, no, the counter-narcotics money can be used to build the wall, because at the end of the day, the wall has a counter-narcotics function. It's stopping drugs from coming into the United States. And so then the issue remained, well, what about the diversion of the second pot of money, which had to do with military construction funds? And so this is a little bit more difficult case for the federal government to make, because the wall is not military construction. And so the question is simply, did the president have the broad authority to divert these funds? And the lower courts had ruled he did not. Nothing in the Congressional Appropriations Act gave the president that authority, but the Fifth Circuit has held that it has implicitly held, they haven't explained this in their ruling, but they've implicitly held that the government is correct that the national emergency law, given that it is such a broad law, allows this diversion to occur, even if nothing in the funding bill allowed it to occur. And so now the Supreme Court will have probably the last word on this.
The attorneys for the plaintiffs say they're going to huddle with their clients and decide whether to ask the entire appeals court to rehear the appeal en banc, or instead ask the Supreme Court to step in. Which do you think is the better alternative for them?
Well, the Fifth Circuit is one of the most conservative courts in the country, so it's not likely that they would win in the Fifth Circuit. If the idea is just to keep this case alive for long enough that maybe, at a different time period it can get to the Supreme Court under different circumstances, then maybe that's what you do. But in the end of the day, if you wanted your best chance of winning, you would skip the en banc proceeding and try to see and take your luck with the Supreme Court. But again, I'm not that optimistic that the plaintiffs will win in the Supreme Court either.
The administration can now go forward with using the $3.6 billion from the Defense Department's military construction budget and $2.5 billion from the Pentagon's drug interdiction budget. How much money do they need to build the wall, and how much has been built?
Well, so everything depends on how you want to define these metrics. So there's a 2,000-mile southern border that separates the United States and Mexico, and 1,300 of those miles is an aquatic border, that's the Rio Grande River, and 700 miles is a land border that takes you through New Mexico, Arizona, and California. If you take the New Mexico, Arizona, and California border, there is always some barrier on all of this 700 miles of border, with the exception of an Indian reservation that exists in Arizona where the government is not able to put barrier, but there's still some voluntary barrier that actually the tribe has. So the question then is, what kind of fence is in what part of the border?
Okay, hold that thought, Leon. Coming up on Bloomberg Law, we'll find out about the wall and whether there may be another travel ban coming up. I'm June Grosso, and this is Bloomberg.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. Pittsburgh Steelers owner Art Rooney II announced at the NFL's Workplace Diversity Committee that the league will examine this year's head coach hiring cycle to determine what can be done to improve opportunities for minority coaching candidates in the NFL. The Rooney Rule, instituted in 2003, requires one or more diverse candidates to be interviewed for each open head coaching position. But during the last hiring cycle, only one candidate of color was hired, Ron Rivera of the Washington Redskins. 70% of NFL players are non-white. MLB has its first female full-time coach. The San Francisco Giants hired Alyssa Nakken under first-year manager Gabe Kapler. Nakken was a three-time All-Conference first baseman in the Sacramento State softball program and a Conference Scholar Athlete of the Year in 2012. Nakken interned for the Giants in 2014. And that's a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Messaging data rates may apply to you.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
Hard Megxit or soft Megxit? Have Harry and Meghan misjudged public feeling? And what does their departure mean for the future of the monarchy? With questions mounting, turn to The Telegraph for answers. Subscribe today at telegraph.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
You're listening to Bloomberg Law with June Grosso from Bloomberg Radio.
I've been talking with Leon Fresco about President Trump's recent win at the Fifth Circuit over the border wall. So, Leon, you're about to explain how much of the wall is actually built.
So the question then is, what kind of fence is in what part of the border? And so if you're talking about 30-foot fence, like the fence that recently somebody was stuck on because it was so high that once they climbed it, they were terrified to go down. That kind of fence is in less than 100 miles of the 2,000-mile border. If you're talking about any kind of barrier, there's something like 689 miles of the 2,000-mile border that has some barrier in it that's separating the United States and Mexico, although it isn't a wall of any kind. It's not actually a wall, and it's actually kind of a fencing type thing where the fence is still penetrable by people who seek to climb it, but it's much, much harder than simply what would be a vehicle barrier where a car couldn't drive through it, but a human being could walk through it. So some of the 700 miles are these vehicle barriers. Others are what are called these Normandy fences, which are like the blocks of wood with chicken wire that are connecting through it. And so the point is, if you're talking about what the president ran on, there's less than 100 miles of that currently on the border.
Now, the Associated Press reported last week that the Trump administration is considering expanding the travel ban, timed to coincide with the third anniversary of the January 2017 executive order that announced a Muslim ban. Can they do this?
Well, I think what the Supreme Court has made clear in the Trump versus Hawaii case is if the administration uses the language of security rather than animus toward a particular group and has a security justification for implementing a ban on certain countries, and then actually maintains the ban in the same manner it has the current travel ban, which is the ban is actually more of a presumption which a person can actually overcome in an individual case. Now, although these cases have been extremely rare, it is still the case that we are accepting handful of people from the countries that have been banned. If that's the framework, I actually think it is indeed very possible that that ban can be expanded. But again, the court will be sensitive toward who are these countries that the ban has been extended to and why.
There are apparently, according to reporting, 7 countries that the ban will be extended to. And there's some reporting that a majority of them are Muslim, including some of the countries that were included in the first ban, but then dropped. Would that cause a problem?
Again, I think what ultimately the Supreme Court said was if the justification was security-based, even if the majority of the countries are Muslim countries, this is not going to be a problem for the court. And so the question is, what will have been the justification for this new ban? And if it's things, I'll give you an example. If it's things like, when we tried to deport you to your country doesn't accept anybody we're trying to deport, or your country's been issuing a lot of fake passports for people, and so we don't know who we're getting, and we're constantly getting people who aren't the people we think they are. If it's those kinds of things, that's a lot more likely to survive.
So a coalition of leading civil rights organizations are asking House leaders to take up the No Ban Act. That's legislation to end the travel ban and prevent a new one. Now that the Supreme Court has ruled that the travel ban was enforceable, was constitutional, will that survive a Supreme Court review?
Yeah, what happened is this. There's a statute that the Congress wrote in the 1950s got called INA 212F that gave the ability to the president to ban one person, a group of people, an entire country for any reason that he felt was required in the national interest. And so the problem with the bans is that the Congress gave this authority to the president. If the Congress took this authority away from the president, then the president wouldn't be able to do these bans. And so what the Supreme Court actually said was that the president can lawfully exercise this banning authority that Congress gave the president. That's what the Supreme Court held. So if Congress takes away the banning authority, then the president wouldn't have it anymore.
We're not hearing any more about these, caravans of migrants coming up from Central America. Is that because the Trump administration has enacted measures to prevent that?
Absolutely. I would say, if you want to use a metaphor, you would say an invisible wall has been put in that's actually been much more effective than an actual wall. And the way to look at it as the invisible wall is that there's a patchwork of barriers designed to deter or prevent migrants from seeking asylum, which is what people were coming to do. And there's basically 3 or 4 ways this has been done, which is that a migrant who crosses the border seeking humanitarian protection today most likely gets assigned an immigration court date months in the future and is told wait in Mexico. And so many people get discouraged and don't come for that reason. They'll get discouraged during the process. Now some migrants are actually being sent to Guatemala, where they are told to apply there instead. Others are being given 7 days to find a lawyer in the United States in an expedited process. And if they lose their claims, they're being removed. And others are even being told, hey, if you're from any other country and you cross through Mexico, you had to have applied in Mexico first before applying in the United States.
Looking at the litigation on immigration that's pending, which case do you see as the most likely to be overturned, where the rule the Trump administration put into effect is most likely to be overturned by a higher court?
Sure. I think that this issue with regard to the expansion of expedited removal, which is the kind of removal where you don't have to have a removal hearing. You can just immediately issue a piece of paper and remove the person. Past 14 days, the rule right now says if you've been in the country longer than 14 days, we can't just give you a piece of paper and remove you. We have to give you an actual hearing where you can actually challenge your deportation. That has been an issue that for about 100 years the Supreme Court has been ducking because they haven't wanted to say that people who are here for an extended period of time have no rights just because they're in a legal status. They haven't wanted to say that. They have said if you just get here minutes ago when you're apprehended, you don't have these rights. But past 14 days, there starts becoming an expectation. Wait a second. You can't, how do you know if someone's been here 6 days or 20 years? And if you don't give them the opportunity to make their case, you're actually potentially making a very scary reduction of due process here. And so that's the one I think is most likely to be overturned, is the expansion of expedited removal.
Thanks, Leon. That's Leon Fresco, a partner at Holland & Knight. Coming up next on Bloomberg Law, will Facebook's high court fights lead the way in privacy litigation this year? I'm June Grosso, and this is Bloomberg.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
In the real world, there are no rabbits in hats, crystal balls, or cards that turn into money. Instead, you get business information from top...
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
I'll read Stan. Will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Oh. Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
You don't just live in one room, So why should your Wi-Fi? With Sky Broadband's Wi-Fi guarantee, you'll get Wi-Fi in every room or money back. Perfect for food shopping in the bedroom, gaming in your PJs in the lounge, or streaming sci-fi movies in the kitchen. Get Sky's super fast broadband and Wi-Fi guarantee. £32 a month for 18 months with $19.95 setup. Click on the banner now.
Sky Fibre errors, Sky Kit required. Refund on boost component of subscription paid during current minimum term up to date of claim. Minimum 3 megabits per second or money back. Prices may change during minimum term. See sky.com/guarantee.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value, with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 12-pack of Bird's Eye chicken dippers, now half price, from £2 to just £1. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 27th of January.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Now the news.
2 Honolulu police officers shot and killed by a suspect believed to have ended up in a house that burned. In Kansas City, Missouri, police say at least 2 people are dead with up to 15 injured in a shooting last night outside of a bar, the suspect believed to be one of the fatalities. Virginia state and local police gearing up for potential violence at today's annual Guns Right event at the state capitol. Nick Valencia is there.
This event takes place every year, though it's taking on a new level of significance because of the threats and also because for the first time in nearly a quarter century, the state legislature is controlled by Democrats. And many Second Amendment supporters here in the state of Virginia and beyond believe that their proposed gun control legislation is a step towards taking away their guns. So that's why they're showing up today here to protest.
The French Foreign Ministry Affairs Office says the idea of a European-led naval mission to protect the Straits of Hormuz, a vital route for oil shipping, now has support from Germany, Belgium, Denmark, Greece, Italy, the Netherlands, and Portugal, besides France itself. I'm Michael.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. This newscast is brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, providing industry partners with commercially focused research and innovation services through its New Jersey Innovation Institute. More at njii.com. With U.S. financial markets closed for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, European stocks are mostly lower, Asia shares closed mixed, and S&P 500 stock index futures are down by a fraction as investors look ahead to a fresh batch of corporate earnings and some key central bank meetings this week. We'll check the latest numbers in a moment. BBB-rated bonds, the lowest quality bonds in the investment grade category, had a great year in 2019 with a total return of 16%. But money managers like KKR and Guggenheim Partners say the BBB party may be coming to an end, as we hear from Bloomberg's Greg Jarrett.
With economic growth relatively stagnant in major global economies and heightened risk of disappointing earnings and greater regulation in areas like technology, a wave of investment-grade companies could be cut to junk over the next 12 to 18 months, this according to KKR. The firm recommends cutting exposure to corporate notes rated in the BBB tier, the bottom of the investments grade scale. Greg Jarrett, Bloomberg Radio.
In the UK, asking prices for homes increased by the most for any January on record, in a sign that the Conservatives' December election win boosted confidence, according to property website Rightmove. Nationwide asking prices increased 2.3% on the month to an average of $400,000. Checking the markets in midday trading in Europe, the London FTSE is down just over 0.1%. The DAX in Germany is up 0.1%. The CAC 40 in Paris down just over 0.1%. In Asia, the Nikkei closed up 0.2%. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong was down 0.9%. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Law with June Grosso from Bloomberg Radio.
You may know this voice. I can play music, answer questions, get the news on weather, create to-do lists, and much more. It's the voice of Amazon's Alexa, the virtual assistant that can do everything from reminding you about appointments to reading the news. But with the growing number of devices that collect personal data, from smartwatches to apps, the public's concern about how that data is used is growing, and tech companies are facing more privacy and data breach lawsuits. Legal experts say they'll be watching Facebook's battles to overturn court rulings on biometric privacy and robocalls this year. Those could help explain when consumers can sue for privacy violations. Joining me to talk about privacy litigation is Daniel Stoller, Bloomberg Law Senior Legal Editor. So, Dan, Facebook is asking the Supreme Court to take up two cases on biometric privacy and robocalls because it didn't like the rulings of the Ninth Circuit. Tell us about those cases.
Yeah, so one of the cases involves Facebook and biometrics. Pretty much they were sued by a user who had uploaded his photos to Facebook's website, and Facebook had then used facial recognition software to get biometric data from that to help tag the photos. But however, Facebook is arguing that just a basic violation of this Illinois biometric privacy law isn't enough to get standing in federal court. However, the Ninth Circuit had said that just the mere capture of this biometric information, facial recognition data, is enough of a privacy intrusion to sue under BIPA. So going forward, that could help clarify how companies could defend against these privacy actions and how consumers can sue under that type of case. In the Facebook robocall case, they're challenging a Ninth Circuit opinion that ruled that there was a broad definition of an auto dialer under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, and they're also challenging whether parts of the TCPA also violates the First Amendment. It's interesting because Facebook does send text messages to users when there's suspicious account activity. When the Ninth Circuit said that they had used an auto dialer in this situation. So in this case with the robocalls, they could be on the hook for TCPA fines and violations as well.
So these cases involve standing. A party has to show that they've been injured to even bring a lawsuit. What's the Supreme Court's position?
So the Supreme Court in 2016 ruled in Spokio v. Robbins that there has to be some sort of concrete harm, and it has to be tied to the infringing bad action. So it can't be too intangible, although some courts are allowing that, the Ninth Circuit and Northern District and other California courts as well. But there's a big grouping of states, Fourth Circuit, Seventh Circuit, that say the mere risk of identity theft isn't enough. There has to be more biometric data actually being used, and you being harmed by that use would be enough for standing. However, there's also a group of other courts, as mentioned before, like the Ninth Circuit, that says you violated this law. The harm is in the collecting of that data.
So there's a circuit court split, and these laws involve high statutory fines, $1,000 to $5,000 per incident in the biometric privacy case. Does that make some legal experts think that justices will take one of these cases?
Yeah, so with the potential millions, if not multi-millions, if not more on the line for Facebook in that case, it would be interesting for the Supreme Court to not take that up. However, if they don't, it does show that they're okay with their Spokio ruling on standing and that they're comfortable with the circuit split. It may not even see that there's a large circuit split, that there's little differences between each circuit and the cases that go before it. But as millions and if not more is on the line, they're likely to kind of weigh in and say, all right, we're happy with our previous decisions. We don't really need to weigh back in there. There's some other cases that they've kind of looked at over the year, haven't taken up, but there wasn't that much on the line.
Is it easier to show standing in a data breach case?
It really depends. When there's an actual law, like here, the Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act, you can point to that law and say there's statutory fines. I was harmed under that law, and because of that, I should be able to bring my case. However, at the same time, in data breaches, you have to show that there's at least a likelihood or some foreseeable risk of identity theft. Now, depending on the type of breach, if a nation state was involved, if there's not a lot of information about that breach, you may not know if your data was ever used or if it can be used in the future. Your data being used 2 years from now may not be foreseeable identity theft risk, but if you can point to a cybersecurity group or you can point to a company not doing what they needed to do, that can help convince judges as well.
I've heard a lot about the Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act. What other states have tough or expansive tech privacy laws?
Well, there's not a lot. So the California Consumer Privacy Act, that will have a lot of new privacy rights to access, right to delete, right to opt out of the sale of your personal information. So that's going to be probably the biggest and most comprehensive state privacy law. There's also some federal privacy laws as well. There's HIPAA, health privacy, federal credit reporting laws, and then there's a bunch of other ones. Across the states, there's a lot of industry-specific ones. One focused on data brokers. Vermont has a law. Nevada also has a law that can have a right to sue. However, there's not a lot of states that give users of big tech platforms the right to directly sue.
Coming up on Bloomberg Law, we'll continue this conversation and look at how regulators are likely to ramp up enforcement of privacy laws this year. I'm June Grosso, and this is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it. Add a boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Do you remember
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 6-pack of Mr. Kipling Angel Slices, now half price, from £1.80 to just 90p. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 27th of January.
Hello, I'm Nat Coombs from ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show, which admittedly is 1 out of 10 for original podcast name, but 10 out of 10 for NFL chat. Every week, we're dropping 4 episodes with an all-pro lineup of terrific guests, journalists, comedians, players, coaches, you name it, all getting you up to speed with everything gridiron. The Nat Coombs Show, American football, British accent. Add to your favourites and listen on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Bloomberg Radio. A reminder, Michael Bloomberg, a Democratic presidential candidate, is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, parent of Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update. Now the news.
2 Honolulu police officers shot and killed by a suspect believed to have ended up in a house that burned. In Kansas City, Missouri, police say at least 2 people are dead with up to 15 injured in a shooting last night outside of a bar, the suspect believed to be one of the fatalities. Virginia state and local police gearing up for potential violence at today's annual Guns Right event at the state capitol. Nick Valencia is there.
This event takes place every year, though it's taking on a new level of significance because of the threats and also because for the first time in nearly a quarter century, the state legislature is controlled by Democrats. And many Second Amendment supporters here in the state of Virginia and beyond believe that their proposed gun control legislation is a step towards taking away their guns. So that's why they're showing up today here to protest.
The French Foreign Ministry Affairs Office says the idea of a European-led naval mission to protect the Straits of Hormuz, a vital route for oil shipping, now has support from Germany, Belgium, Denmark, Greece, Italy, the Netherlands, and Portugal, besides France itself.
You're listening to Bloomberg Law with June Grosso from Bloomberg Radio.
I've been talking to Dan Stoller, Bloomberg Law Senior Legal Editor, about the privacy lawsuits to watch this year. So consumer lawyers and companies obviously have opposing interests in these cases. And consumer advocates want to drive the litigation to more plaintiff-friendly jurisdictions, while companies want to drive the litigation out of those jurisdictions. What are the jurisdictions that plaintiffs most like to file tech privacy cases?
So the Northern District of California and other California districts are really the ones to go to. Really anything in the Ninth Circuit in Washington State and have shown that they're more plaintiff-friendly. You wouldn't want some of your cases showing up in Texas, some of the more conservative districts, because they haven't been as open. However, in the same vein, tech companies also want to fight battles on their home turf, so you also see Facebook wanting to bring some of their cases in the Northern District of California. However, the more and more they lose at these courts, the more and more they lose in front of their home courts, maybe they'll look to defend a case in front of an Illinois judge or defend a case in front of a Texas judge, because that will be better off for them. The other interesting thing is, speaking with plaintiffs' attorneys and privacy advocates, they're going to look to actually move and start filing cases in other jurisdictions that they see favorable. One I just brought up was Illinois. I was speaking to a plaintiff's attorney there, and he told me, yes, we do like California. That's been the most favorable to us, but Illinois is also pretty favorable, and we also think courts in other jurisdictions, even in D.C., can be favorable to them as well. So we'll probably see a lot more privacy suits in a lot more jurisdictions going forward.
Now, one of the kinds of privacy suits coming up is health data being used. And that's something that I think most people have a reaction to. What kinds of suits might we see?
We'll see the general HIPAA, which is the health privacy law, suits on just general doctors using information. However, the more important and more interesting and more emerging area is where HIPAA and other federal health privacy laws don't cover that use of data. The use of Alexa to track some of your information Apple smartwatches being another good example. They're collecting your heart rate, they're collecting your blood pressure, they're collecting all sorts of medical information. However, they're not transporting that to a doctor, and there is a medical record. So we put trust into our doctors, and there's laws that protect that, but we're also putting trust in these big tech companies to collect some of the more intimate details rather than our zip codes, email addresses, and phone numbers. And those are probably going to be the areas where lawsuits emerge from.
And that's the reason I do not have Alexa. Are there any suits pending about Alexa or about the smartwatches?
There's suits about voice recognition going on right now. A lot of that came from revelations that Facebook had been using humans to oversee things you would say into their smart devices, into your phone, and through their transcription devices. And allegedly that was without consent and without the notice of any of the users that were involved. Pretty much those suits will come out if folks start to see that, hey, Alexa's tracking something weird that I'm doing, or I said something and it wasn't Alexa's wake word, or it wasn't something like that. And not to pick on Alexa, but any of these devices, you say that wake word and you're kind of giving it consent to do it. But if it started tracking your movements around your house, or the video turned on all of a sudden for an Alexa device that has a video and was videotaping you just even watching TV, that could be a major privacy issue. Not to say that that will happen, but those are the types of issues with these emerging devices that could pop up.
I also want to touch on the anti-robocall measure that President Trump signed into law. Who will that help? And will it cause any more litigation?
It'll help a lot of us consumers to stop getting a lot of those pesky robocalls. But at the same time, it's going to help a lot of companies that do normal robocalls so they can have clarity on if the calls they're doing are going to be violative of this new law, or even if they're going to be violative of other robocall laws. It does add new penalties and does add new FCC enforcement and more tracking to make sure that these robocalls are coming from accurate websites. There's no spoofing involved. So any company that's doing a robocall, as the company, I would want to know that my call is getting to the person and that person understands the call is coming from me. The issues come up when you get a pesky robocall from somebody that isn't even a company you even want to talk to, or isn't somebody you even ever consented to. And that's what that law is trying to do.
So how are federal regulators responding to pressure to address the public's concerns about the use of their personal data?
So the Federal Trade Commission, at least over 2019, went out and started enforcing their FTC consent orders, which are previous settlements, against some of the biggest tech companies, Facebook, Equifax, and YouTube. And YouTube actually, as of recently, had to update their terms of service to comply with COPPA and to comply with children's privacy actions. So as part of this multi-million-dollar settlement, they had to update their children's privacy protection. So that's how federal regulators are really getting involved. They're also looking to update kids' privacy law rules, which could actually limit how people on YouTube and how these producers of content actually advertise to children and how they can collect children's data, because some of their biggest viewers and some of the biggest fan bases for online content is children when you look at it.
Are any regulators looking at grown-ups? In other words, are any regulators looking at the problems that grown-ups have with their data being used by businesses?
The Federal Trade Commission has been focused for a while on going after companies that don't live up to these promises of either protecting your data or using data in a way that they don't tell you they're using. One of the biggest examples is Facebook, and stemming from that Cambridge Analytica data scandal. Pretty much Facebook allegedly was sharing data or using data and giving data to third parties, and you allegedly hadn't consented to that. And amongst a bunch of other privacy violations, the FTC said, hey, Facebook, you weren't living up to your standards, and hit them with a $5 billion fine so they could change their business practices. Now, Facebook did pay that fine, or was willing to pay that fine, and didn't change too much of their business practices. However, they're also under the hook for any future violations. So going forward, the FTC says it's going to continue to go after big tech companies for privacy violations and data security violations. So there's a lot of focus from federal regulators.
State attorneys general are sometimes the first line of defense for consumers. What are they doing?
State AGs have also been laser focused on tech companies, and almost even a bit more so than the federal government. They have a lot more flexibility. They can bring these lawsuits without these higher bars in state courts. We have DCAG, Carl Racine, the Massachusetts Attorney General is also bringing lawsuits against Facebook for the Cambridge Analytica data scandal. There's also a multi-state investigation that's still going on into the Facebook's third-party data sharing. So there's a lot of looks into big tech companies, Google, Twitter, whomever, from these state AGs, and they're also going to be focusing on kids' data and adults' data use and looking into new uses of data. So there's a lot of focus from AGs. They can bring big fines, they can team up together, and they have a lot more flexibility.
Let's go overseas for a second. Let's talk international. You write that Ireland is likely to make the most noise in EU privacy enforcement.
Yeah, so the Irish Data Protection Commission is the lead EU privacy regulator for a lot of the big tech companies, Facebook, Google, Twitter, Apple, and they have 21 open investigations into those same companies. And under the General Data Protection Regulation, EU's privacy law, they can bring up to 4% of annual revenue fines for these companies. So for a Facebook, for a Google, for a Twitter, that's in the billions. Now, it's not as much as the FTC's $5 billion fine, but they can also hit them with a 4% fine for every single privacy violation if they wanted to. Now, they won't. They're going to be a little bit more hesitant. They'll probably start with lower fines, but that's why Ireland's a big threat. And they've shown that they're willing and ready to. They have two big enforcement actions, one for WhatsApp, one for Twitter, coming down the pike first quarter of this year. We can expect big fines out of that. But that would still leave 19 other investigations open that could each bring millions, if not billions, of fines each. So, yeah, we have U.S. regulators doing a lot, but we also have these European regulators, although looking after EU privacy interests, could make big changes to how these companies use U.S. people's data.
How concerned should tech companies be, and how concerned are they? Are they looking at the data privacy investigations as sort of the cost of doing business, or are they looking at it as, oh, we have to change our practices?
It's a little bit of both. I think at the end of the day, they don't want to have to pay this money. They don't want to have the reputational damage. But also, Facebook announced before the FTC fine months before that they were going to be willing to pay $5 billion. So to them, and their stock price went up soon after, they got more users. So their bottom lines aren't really being affected by these big privacy settlements yet. Now, if we see a multiple $5 billion fines and that's taking out a lot of their revenue or going after a lot of their business practices, then yeah, that'd be a big stage. Also, if some of these European regulators can force one of these tech companies to change a business practice or steps even further and says, hey, CEO of a company, you're specifically the reason why this is happening, that could really make a big issue. Or if one of these state AGs does the same thing. But until that point, companies are mostly concerned with complying with a bunch of different laws that aren't the same and the costs associated with that. With enforcement, yeah, they're scared. They don't want the reputational damage. But if we think of Facebook, Google, or Amazon can't afford a $5 billion fine here and there, then we'd be mistaken.
Thanks, Dan. That's Dan Stoller, Bloomberg Law Senior Legal Editor. And that's it for this edition of Bloomberg Law. Remember, you can listen to all the latest legal topics in the news anytime on our Bloomberg Law podcast. You can find them on iTunes, SoundCloud, or at bloomberg.com/podcast/law. I'm June Grosso. Thanks so much for listening. And remember to tune into the Bloomberg Law Show tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network?
Imagine your perfect wedding day, surrounded by stunning parkland on the iconic Goodwood Estate. Choose between 3 spectacular venues, from the Regency splendor of Goodwood House to the contemporary luxury of the Goodwood Hotel, or the irresistible style and charm of the Kennels. Why don't you come and see for yourself? Book a show round with our Goodwood Weddings team today. Visit goodwood.com. Only at Goodwood.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up. Run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash. Skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up. Skip, mix it, run.
Mix it. Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 6-pack of Mr. Kipling Angel Slices, now half price, from £1.80 to just 90p. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 27th of January.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now a global news update.
Tragic streak, credible threats. I'm Michael Toscano. A streak of shootings, 2 dead, including the shooter, 15 injured at a shooting outside a bar in Kansas City, Missouri last night. A manhunt continues after 2 people were killed and 5 others injured following a shooting during a concert at a San Antonio club. And as John Lawrence reports, 2 Honolulu police officers were shot and killed.
Our deepest condolences go out to the families of Officers Tiffany Enriquez and Kauliki Kalama.
Police Chief Susan Ballard says suspect Jerry Hennell is accused of stabbing a woman, shooting at the officers, and setting fire to a house that spread throughout a neighborhood.
HPD has opened investigations into 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of second-degree assault, and multiple counts of first-degree attempted murder.
The suspect's condition unknown after the house fire. A high state of alert in Virginia's capital as gun rights activists converge on Richmond for an annual event. But this year, Nick Valenci reports other less peaceful groups are making threats.
State of emergency announced by the governor leading into this event. He also announced a temporary weapons ban on state capitol grounds because of what he said were credible threats against law enforcement. And indeed, there were arrests leading into this event. 7 suspected neo-Nazi members arrested across a variety of states, some of whom the FBI said were on their way here to do harm.
China reporting a sharp rise in the number of people infected with the new coronavirus, including the first cases in Beijing. The outbreak coincides with China's busiest travel period as millions board trains and planes for the Lunar New Year holidays. Kansas City quarterback Patrick Mahomes threw for 29 yards and 3 touchdowns to lead the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. Westwood One Sports' Kevin Harlan with the call.
Shotgun snap, dropping back, looking right, no, looking left, no. Now he's from behind, hit, he breaks free, he staggers down, losing his balance, down he goes at the 18. That's it. That's it.
I'm Michael Toscano.
Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, overdesigned, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Obsessing over every detail means we're confident in offering a 100% quality guarantee. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try with this special offer. Get a Harry's starter set with a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, shave gel, and a travel cover. All for just $3 plus free shipping. Just go to harrys.com and enter 6655 at checkout. That's harrys.com, code 6655. Enjoy.
There has been a major drop in illegal crossings of the U.S. southern border as the United States makes more asylum seekers wait in Mexico. Arizona has the biggest drop, as correspondent Clayton Neville tells us.
This is all being credited to the Remain in Mexico program. This is the program where asylum seekers are forced to stay in Mexican cities instead of coming across the U.S. border and waiting until their court proceedings take place. The U.S. government says that in a lot of cases, people just aren't showing up to their court hearings because they're already in the United States, which is prompting a lot of people to come to the U.S. with the main thought, let's just get in. So this is deterring that. And as you said, in Arizona, border arrests there fell 94% from May to October, and that program being credited is the Remain in Mexico program.
14,000 migrants arrested in May in the Yuma sector, down to 800 in October, 55,000 bussed back to Mexico. I'm Michael Toscano.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. U.S. financial markets are closed in observance of the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. International markets are trading on this Monday. In midday trading in Europe, the FTSE 100 in London is down just over 0.1%. The DAX in Germany is up about 0.1%. The CAC 40 in Paris down 0.2%. Overnight, the Nikkei closed up 0.2% in Japan, and the Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong was down 0.9%. A pneumonia outbreak in central China has widened, with more than 200 people now diagnosed with the new SARS-like virus. As health experts say, there's now evidence that the illness is spreading from person to person. With the Chinese New Year just days away, a time of heavy traveling and family gatherings, the virus's spread may intensify. In Hong Kong, Dan Clowry, a registered nurse from San Francisco, said he's cutting short a trip to China and will be monitoring his health closely in the coming days.
Stay safe, keep clean, do normal precautions.
Earnings season gets back into focus when traders go back to their desks after the holiday. Netflix reports after the closing bell Tuesday. Bloomberg's Nathan Hager has a preview.
Bloomberg Intelligence thinks Netflix will beat its own estimate of 7.6 million new subscribers in the fourth quarter, driven by blockbusters like The Witcher and the Oscar-nominated Irishman. Gene Munster with Loop Ventures tells Bloomberg outperformance will be a trend for Netflix in 2020. Nathan Hager, Bloomberg Radio.
Under the new trade deal, the U.S. may be shipping 700,000 barrels of oil a day to China. Crude oil rose following supply disruptions in Libya and Iraq. Iraq temporarily stopped output at an oil field on Sunday, while Libyan production almost ground to a halt after armed forces shut down a pipeline. Brent futures up 0.4%. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Masters in Business with Barry Ritholtz on Bloomberg Radio.
My special guest this week is Ilana Weinstein. She is the founder and CEO of the IDW Group, a leading boutique for hedge funds, private equity, and family offices in search of top investment talent. Previously, she worked at such August firms as Goldman Sachs and the Boston Consulting Group. She got her undergraduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania and her MBA from Harvard. Ilana Weinstein, welcome to Bloomberg Radio. And I add that because I've seen you on Bloomberg TV many times, but I don't recall ever hearing you on Bloomberg Radio.
This is my first time, Barry.
So you've been in the asset management industry for more than 2 decades. How did you end up on the recruiting side?
The short answer is I was really young and I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, literally. Mm-hmm. I'd gone to HBS after a year at Goldman. So I literally went from my dorm room to my parents' home, worked at Goldman for a year, and then went to HBS. And just to go back and answer your question, I ended up going to the Boston Consulting Group really because I felt I needed to get a post-MBA to my MBA. Mm-hmm. I wanted to figure out what path I wanted to take, what sorts of problems I wanted to solve, what industries were interesting to me. And this is I was in my late 20s. This is in the mid 90s. So the .com, because that's of course what we called it back then. Right. The .com bubble was just bubbling. And within a year and a half, my entire class of MBAs at BCG. The class I entered with was gonzo. I was literally, they'd all gone to California to seek their, start the next whatever.
Give me a big fat slug of stock options and a stock that just goes up 10% a day, and everybody jumped at it.
And done, right. And you can imagine how that ended for most of them.
It depends on if they knew when to hit the bid or not. If they were smart and took off some risk, not too bad. The people who didn't?
So they had gone to try to start .com companies. And that wasn't my gig. I realized I'd learned a lot at BCG. I didn't want to be a management consultant as a career path. And I still was figuring out, what do I want to do? And before I committed to any particular pathway, I figured I would jump into another milieu where I could learn, again, more about companies and functions and just figure out where I wanted to commit to. And so I joined a large recruiting firm thinking that would give me a purview. And as it turned out, I was really good at it. And I fell into, I quickly joined their financial services practice. And that's how I ended up in recruiting.
And so you end up focusing a little further along in your career on hedge funds, private equity, family offices.
So what happened was, after about a year or two there, the .com bubble burst. And this is this big search firm I was at, their financial services practice was really focused more on investment banking, equities, traditional asset management, sort of what I'll call older school businesses, compared to what I really fell into and started to focus on, which was back in the late 90s, early 2000s, as you'll remember. This is what was fueling the sell side. This is where the action was. It was the prop groups. And it was these new first of their kind type financial products. It was credit correlation, asset swaps, wasn't even called credit derivatives back then. Highly structured, first of their kind, derivatives-y types of transactions. That's what we were focused on for the sell side clients that I was working with, and that's where the juice was. And all of a sudden, I developed my own business, which was on fire within this big firm, and it just became obvious after a few years to me to really try to do this on my own, given I was acting effectively independently within a larger construct, which was having issues at the time. So
let's talk also about the timing. As you were explaining that, I began to think about the timing. If we go back 20, 25 years, what were there, 200, 400 hedge funds? Today there's 11,000. Your timing into that ramp up could not have been any better. It was perfect,
Barry, right? I planned it perfectly.
Right? I mean, so all these, and Goldman Sachs is infamous for saying to a group of traders who they smell might be itching to head out, hey, why don't you guys go set up a hedge fund? We'll get you capital. We'll prime broker for you, and we'll steer some potential clients to you. And that's how they built an immense prime brokerage business. How much was the Goldman Sachs connection helpful, or as you as an analyst?
It had nothing. I was literally just understand. I started at Goldman in the middle of my senior year at Penn. Right. I mean, because I just was, I don't know, I was stupid. I was like working. I got through all my classes. I didn't have enough fun in college. Right. Is the bottom line. I'm making up for it, trying to make up for lost time now. But I was finished with my classes. I started middle of my senior year, and I was out within literally a year to HBS. So think about it. I hadn't even graduated from college. So that was not what really jump started my business. What it was, however, you are correct in signaling the sell side as a driver of hedge fund talent, because back then it was the prop groups that were the precursors to hedge funds. It was these, again, high octane. And these were the guys who got paid the most on the sell side at the time.
Coming up, we continue our conversation with Alana Weinstein of the IDW Group, discussing the business of recruiting.
You're listening to Masters in Business with Barry Ritholtz on Bloomberg Radio.
When it comes to parenting, there are no perfect answers. But that's okay, because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on adoption, visit adoptuskids.org. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Jamie Bolton, a member of the dynasty that has run Santander for more than a century, was sentenced to 18 months in prison and fined $58 million for smuggling Pablo Picasso's Head of a Young Woman painting out of Spain. Spain has some of the strictest heritage laws in Europe, and Bolton has about a week to appeal the sentence. In other art news, fugitive Hong Kong billionaire Joseph Lau is selling David Hockney's The Splash at the year's first major auction. The 1966 canvas has a low estimate of $26.1 million. Known for his investment in art, wine, and jewelry, Lau bought 5 diamonds for $128 million from 2009 through 2015. Speaking of gems, the second biggest diamond in history will be cut, polished, and turned into a collection of Louis Vuitton jewelry. Lucara Diamond found the 1,758-carat Sewello diamond at its Botswana mine last year. It's unclear how valuable the polished diamonds will be. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Take the helm and ignite your spirit of adventure with a Sunsail holiday. Relax on a skippered yacht from sunny St. Lucia to the nutmeg-scented shores of Grenada. Or take charge with a bareboat charter along Dubrovnik's glittering coastline. With up to 20% off selected destinations, now is the time to book your Sunsail adventure. Sunsail. See the world differently.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it. Add a boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
Hard Megxit or soft Megxit? Have Harry and Meghan misjudged public feeling? And what does their departure mean for the future of the monarchy? With questions mounting, turn to The Telegraph for answers. Subscribe today at telegraph.co.uk.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
I'm Barry Ritholtz. You're listening to Masters in Business on Bloomberg Radio. My special guest today is Alana Weinstein. She is the founder and CEO of IDW Group, which is a boutique recruitment firm for hedge funds, private equity, family offices. Let's talk a little bit, Alana, about how your business works. Do hedge funds and family offices come to you looking for slots to fill? Are the traders and fund managers reaching out to you? What is the structure like?
So let me back up and tell you, which I'm actually quite proud of. We've been in business for almost 17 years, 17 this February. most of our clients, we've been working with practically, if not since the beginning, certainly within the first few years of inception of IDW. So what that means is we really know their business. We've helped them build their business. And yes, they are coming to us for specific assignments, whether it's, and the common thread being they are all senior people who can move the needle, whether it's someone to be a TMT PM for equities, someone to run an emerging markets business, someone to build and run distress. But at the same time, and this goes back perhaps to my BCG background, our role, my firm's role, is to also be an advisor to them as well as to the market. So it's I'll give you 2 assignments we're working on today and the genesis of it. Each one is arguably for one of the biggest and most sophisticated hedge funds in the world. One, I started talking with the founder at the end of the summer about a new business he wants to build. He runs a $40 billion hedge fund, super successful, and he wants to create something wholly other than what he does today. So we're helping him find somebody who could oversee that and build that. That's a very sophisticated person who's not, this isn't someone looking for a job. This is somebody who has actually had great success with what they've done in the past. And this is kind of an interesting, maybe chapter 2. And as successful as they've been, it's an opportunity for even greater wealth creation. The second example I'll give you is another client that is almost as big. And again, these are 2 of the most successful hedge funds in the world, very forward-thinking guys. This is a client we've worked with for a long time. I came to him and I said to him, I see an arb in the market right now. There's a universe of people who are really talented and are staying where they are, not because they're happy, but because a better option doesn't exist. And if you created this, I think you could capture that alpha, right? This group of individuals that have been phenomenal P&L generators, even in the last few years, where it's been very difficult. He's now building that business. So it's both working on discrete assignments for our clients, as well as coming to them with advice about where to take their how to take their funds forward.
That's fascinating. So if someone comes to you and they're looking to fill a specific role, what is your thought process like when you're trying to say, who do I know that might be a good fit for this? Or if I in particular who comes to mind, how do you go about creating a pool of applicants that could fill that role?
Well, after again, almost 2 decades doing this, we typically
you know most of the players.
We kind of know. I'm not going to go so far as to say we have the answer before we begin, although that is often correct. Like actually formally begin the search.
Like someone says something and you're like, I know, in the back of your head, I have just the person.
We've done so much work in every conceivable asset class so many times that when we start something, it's rarely truly brand new. What it can be, because certain strategies are more cyclical than others. So, for example, when we did here's a good example, when we did the head of emerging markets for one of our clients, he asked me how much work we'd done in EM. And I told him we had done a fair bit of work. This is going back a few years, but because it's a cyclical strategy, not for a while.
Right.
So there, what we did is we threw a lasso over the universe sort of as we knew it from when we last left off and when that strategy was last in vogue. And it was a pretty sizable universe. But, and this was a global search as well, right? Because it's ahead of emerging markets. The person could sit here or could sit in London. And we just dive in and it kind of, we build a tapestry of who the best people are, which is both by meeting people that we already know to be good. But even if we have no idea, the reality is we're doing so much work in other areas, whether it's credit, rates, macro, And if we're doing work at a multi-strat and we have the credit candidates or the equities candidates in play, they will also have perspective on who is good in EM, right? Whether it's at their firm or they may know someone that they respect at another firm. And the common theme is these are people, we're reaching out to people who we view as best in class, and talented people tend to recommend other talented people. So we very quickly form a picture of who the best people are. And the other thing, Barry, is just good old-fashioned hard work. When we do a search, any search, we're typically going through maybe 200-300 people, even though I know the answer is within 10 to 15 of those. We just want to make sure we're leaving no stone unturned and also building our own depth and breadth of knowledge.
So when you make a final recommendation to a firm, I imagine this varies from firm to firms. Do some firms say, find me the guy and I'll hire them? Or do firms say, give me your best, 3 choices and we'll interview them? What's the range like?
It's usually iterative because, again, there's a best 3 choices in its basest form, which is people who are who are the people who can generate consistent P&L over time, that meet with our investing, our investment parameters. But your version of who those best 3 people are may be different than someone else's. Part of it is cultural fit.
That was my next question.
Part of it is just how flexible you as a founder are going to be with respect to giving them. You may say you're going to give them a fair degree of, a lot of autonomy, but they may need more than what you're willing to give them. And then there are just nuances. You may say you're open to somebody who runs in a manner that's concentrated and volatile, but their version of concentration and volatility may be too much for you.
Coming up, we continue our conversation with Alana Weinstein of the IDW Group, discussing today's asset management industry.
You're listening to Masters in Business with Barry Ritholtz on Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD. Partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE SIP.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number 1. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Makes it hot. Skip. Makes it run. Makes it.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
On a TUI tour, our English-speaking local guides will take you off the tourist trail. They won't just help you find the perfect souvenir, they'll show you how to make it. Choose from over 70 unforgettable tours worldwide. From tranquil temples in India to sunrise safaris in South Africa. On a TUI tour, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Book now and enjoy up to £200 off per booking. Booking T's and C's and minimum spend applies. Selected holidays only. At all protected.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 6-pack of Mr. Kipling Angel Slices, now half price, from £1.80 to just 90p. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 27th of January.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Police in Kansas City, Missouri say at least 2 people are dead and upwards of a dozen may have been injured in a shooting outside a bar just before midnight. The bar appeared to be celebrating the Kansas City Chiefs' advancement to the Super Bowl. President Trump's legal team is calling the impeachment articles against President Trump poisonous partisanship.
Trump recruiting high-profile defense lawyer Alan Dershowitz to help build his case.
I will be advocating against impeachment of this president based on the constitutional criteria.
House Democrats filing their 111-page trial brief calling, quote, President Trump's conduct the framers' worst nightmare.
Lauren Fox, the Senate trial resumes tomorrow. China has reported a sharp rise in the number of people infected with coronavirus. The outbreak coincides with the country's busiest travel period as millions board trains and planes for the Lunar New Year holiday. I'm John Trout.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. U.S. financial markets are closed for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. International exchanges are open. We'll check the latest numbers in a moment. BlackRock plans to drop investments with high sustainability-related risk as climate concerns drive a sweeping change in the way the firm invests its $7 trillion in assets. Philip Hildebrand, vice chairman at BlackRock, says the move was in part driven by the firm's clients.
Clients have been telling us for a while that this is an important issue. They've recognized that climate risk is investment risk. Sustainability risks are ultimately investment risks, whether it's through flooding, physical events, regulatory development. So they've understood, and they've been calling for this, in a sense, to help them get ahead of these trends.
Hildebrand spoke with Bloomberg Television at the Davos Economic Forum. The U.S.-China trade agreement is set to intensify the battle for the world's most prized oil market. China's imports of U.S. crude may reach 700,000 barrels a day or more this year, according to estimates from oil consultants. That volume would put the U.S. among the top 10 suppliers to China. American barrels will find themselves in fierce competition with supplies from West Africa and the North Sea. Have you heard about the U.S. millionaires who want to pay more taxes? Bloomberg's Greg Jarrett has their story.
They call themselves the patriotic millionaires, and they say with a straight face, it's time the ultra-affluent kick in more to Uncle Sam. The group of 200 or so millionaires is pressing for a more progressive tax system. Prominent members include Disney heiress Abigail Disney, Men's Warehouse founder George Zimmer, real estate developer Jeffrey Gural, and Chuck Collins, heir to the Oscar Mayer fortune. It takes an annual income of $1 million or at least $5 million in assets to join. Greg Jarrett, Bloomberg Radio.
Checking the numbers, the London FTSE down 0.3%, the DAX in Germany up 0.1%, the Nikkei finished up 0.2%, the Hang Seng off 0.9%. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Barry Ritholtz. You're listening to Masters in Business on Bloomberg Radio. My extra special guest this week is Ilana Weinstein. She is the founder and CEO of the IDW Group, a leading boutique for hedge funds, private equity, and family offices in search of top investment talent. She previously worked at Goldman and at the Boston Consulting Group. She has her MBA from Harvard. Let's jump into something you alluded to earlier. The past decade has not been especially kind to most hedge funds. A lot of them have been struggling. First question, from your unique vantage point, why is that? And second, what can they do to turn things around?
Okay, so I don't know that it's been the past decade. I think it's more from 2015 on.
Okay.
So
we could. That's a whole longer discussion.
That's a whole longer discussion. We can talk, but
it's certainly been tough.
It's been a very, very tough environment. But let's talk about what's gone on, and we'll get to timing. So, and let's juxtapose it to when I started, which we talked about earlier, which was 2003. That's when I started my firm. $500 billion of assets under management, 3,000 hedge funds. As you said, Barry, now there's 11,000 hedge funds and $3.5 trillion of AUM. Yeah. A lot of that growth actually came post-crisis. At the time of in 2008, it was 1.4 trillion. Now it's 3.5. So that's a lot of growth, actually, in the last 10 years.
Is that organic growth of assets, or is that just capital flowing?
Capital flowing in, literally, especially post-crisis, right? That's when you saw the shift, right? And that's also, you mentioned earlier, we do, work to find investment talent for the hedge fund industry, but we also do work to find, and this is when this started, was in 2008. We have a very meaty practice looking at non-investment talent across functions like president, COO, head of marketing.
Meaning the non-investment administrative side, operations side.
But senior. But what really drove that was post-crisis, you saw all the shift from fund of funds and high net worth LPs to institutional LPs, right? Because they realized that had they invested in a hedge fund, they would have done much better than buying the market, right? Most hedge funds were down half. They were down, but they were down half as much as the S&P on average.
That's about right.
So institutions said, well, wait a second. This is an asset class that we should be investing in. And so all of a sudden, hedge funds had to grow up, right? It was no longer
meaning legal compliance, accounting, operations,
right. So
trading.
We were suddenly
they couldn't just be a fly by night sort of a couple of guys working,
which is what it was, right? So we were brought in. All these founders that we did work for on the investing side said, "Well, wait a second. My head of marketing isn't going to cut it anymore. My COO isn't going to cut." So we had to revamp these funds and make them institutional, right? So they would be attractive to institutional LPs. So what happened is you saw all this institutional money pouring into the hedge fund world, and institutional LPs were also far less sophisticated back then about hedge funds because it was a new asset class to them. So what happened? So you had this huge growth of funds, tremendous amount of capital pouring into the industry. Technology became much more sophisticated, right? Think about technology in 2003 to today. So today, everyone has access to the same information. That's why scale is so important in this business, to have the ability to have data science and quant and a machine internally that can turn that data into alpha signals. Very few funds do that successfully, but it gives their people a tremendous leg up if they do create that in-house. So everyone has access to the same data. Information's much more transparent.
Right.
Also, since 2003, to date, you have the platforms. When I say the platforms, I talk about the multi-managers like Citadel and Point72 and Millennium and Balyasny. These guys exploded. They got so much bigger. You have all these PMs now sitting at these shops. And so many more eyes and ears at conferences, and behind a shorting model that can suss out underperformance. So if management says something squishy at a conference, it used to have 3 to 6 months for that underperformance to get priced fully.
Right.
Now that happens in 2 days.
Amazing.
So the window of efficiency, for performance has gotten much smaller, and LPs, as I said, have gotten much more sophisticated. And so with all of this, returns have come down because the industry is so much more crowded. Oh, and liquidity, right? Mutual funds and retail have shrunk. So there's far less liquidity now than there was back then. Fewer companies are going public, right? With increased regulation and scrutiny, CEOs are like, I don't want to go public. If I'm a tech company, I can just go to a big tech private equity firm and get funded that way. I don't have to subject myself to this. So for all of those reasons, it's become far more difficult to generate alpha.
Coming up, we continue our conversation with Alana Weinstein of the IDW Group, discussing why talent is so valuable.
You're listening to Masters in Business with Barry Ritholtz on Bloomberg Radio.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really, really, really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run. Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up, lift. Mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
When it comes to music, I've heard it all. Pink Floyd, Sean Paul, Slipknot. But in the Witch Test Lab, hearing isn't enough. When we test headphones, we really listen. Not just to the music, but to the stuff that gets in the way. The traffic, the chatter, all that. Mind the gap. We simulate the loudest commute to find you the headphones that cancel out the noise. so you know we're only recommending the best.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Got big plans for 2020? Capture and share every highlight on a gorgeous iPhone 11 with an ultra-wide camera. In Tesco Mobile's big January sale, you can get the latest iPhone for £40.75 a month with double data. That's a mighty 20 gigs. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 26th of January. Was 10 gigs, now 20 gigs. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status. Phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 6-pack of Mr. Kipling Angel Slices, now half price, from £1.80 to just 90p. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores, subject to availability. Offer ends 27th of January.
Come on, everybody! It's lunchtime, and that means, yeah, you guessed it, jump time! Turn off your tech, get off your chair, and let's get moving! Who's with me?
Or leave the motivation to Vitality. With our life insurance, you could save up to 40% on a Garmin fitness watch for a little nudge to get your weekly steps in. Now that's real motivation. Search Vitality Life. Life's better with Vitality. Variable discount. Postage and packaging terms and conditions apply.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Listening to Bloomberg Radio. A reminder, Michael Bloomberg, a Democratic presidential candidate, is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, parent of Bloomberg Radio. Now, a news update. Now the news.
Police in Kansas City, Missouri say at least 2 people are dead and upwards of a dozen may have been injured in a shooting outside a bar just before midnight. The bar appeared to be celebrating the Kansas City Chiefs' advancement to the Super Bowl. President Trump's legal team is calling the impeachment articles against President Trump poisonous partisanship.
Trump recruiting high-profile defense lawyer Alan Dershowitz to help build his case.
I will be advocating against impeachment of this president based on the constitutional criteria.
House Democrats filing their 111-page trial brief calling, quote, President Trump's conduct the framers' worst nightmare.
Lauren Fox, the Senate trial resumes tomorrow. China has reported a sharp rise in the number of people infected with coronavirus. The outbreak coincides with the country's busiest travel period as millions board trains and planes for the Lunar New Year holiday. I'm John Trout.
I'm Barry Ritholtz. You're listening to Masters in Business on Bloomberg Radio. My extra special guest this week is Alana Weinstein. She runs a leading boutique for hedge fund, private equity, and family offices, recruiting the top talent in the industry. Our last segment, you discussed all sorts of really fascinating things I wanted to circle back to, in particular about the shifts in where institutions are putting their money and the fee structure. So let's start with the fees. One of the things I've seen that's been kind of interesting, and you explained earlier why institutions hate to pay alpha prices for beta, is the rise of a so-called fulcrum fee, where there's a very modest fee on assets, and the actual profit sharing fee, the typical 2 and 20 part of the fee, is not on what the S&P provides, but only on the excess performance. So it might be, instead of 2 and 20, 25 basis points and 30. What do you think of those sorts of fee structures? Do they have any longevity?
I think that we need to move to a model which is closer. If funds are going to charge what they charge, which is sizable, we need to move to a structure where LPs are paying for alpha. That's the bottom line. So whether it is they lower their fees or they just charge on alpha, that has to be where the industry is going. Or here's another thought. There are hedge funds which really, and this is true of a lot of the single manager long short equity funds, whether Tiger Cubs or related, some of these guys are really best at generating long alpha. They're really not that good on the short side. And if you look closely at the composition of their return, the shorts are actually volatility enhancers and alpha detractors. But they have to short because they're hedge funds, right? They can't charge 2 and 20 with just having a long only model.
And it's very hard to short when the market has, at least for the first half of this bull market, just rampaged straight up from 09 to 20, let's call it 15.
It's not what they do best. There are, and they're also not set up to do it as well as the multi-managers that have much broader and deeper resources to help these guys be successful with respect to managing factor volatility and coming up with single name alpha shorts. So the best thing these more concentrated directional managers could do would be to say, okay, I'm best at generating long alpha. Therefore, let me set myself up in a way where they create an alternative long only fund where, and I think this is how a lot of these funds are going to go. You recently saw in the last year, Soroban it really converted most of their assets to long only. And so the idea being, if I'm best at generating long alpha and I'm not that good at managing short-term volatility and coming up with alpha shorts, alpha generating single name shorts, but I need 2 to 3 or 4 years to let my thesis play out, then you know what? Maybe you just charge on alpha at the end of that time period. And that's you have a very duration. And it's a totally different structure, but that's the point. You need to figure out what you're best at. It's so hard now to generate consistent alpha, and you need to figure out what structure is going to enable you to be competitive, and that may mean locking up capital for a longer period of time and charging less or just charging on alpha. But the idea that one size fits all when it comes to fees, no matter what your investing style is or how much beta you employ, is ridiculous. The guy charging it's the same fee structure for the guy running net 30 and running net 60. So I think there should be a hurdle with respect to how much is alpha and how much is beta.
You mentioned how many hedge fund closings there were in 2018. Typically, when a fund shuts down, does that money leave the space or does it just rotate to a different hedge fund, at least from an institutional perspective?
Well, given the trend line I shared with you earlier, which is we have now $60 billion of net outflows to the industry, that's net outflows. I think money is actually leaving the industry. That's where I think things are going. And so it could go to another fund, but the problem is there are so few good options. It doesn't want to go to another fund that has had the same meh or crappy performance. Right. A lot of the better funds, candidly, are closed.
Right.
That's the truth.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why you see when guys splinter off from the funds that are closed and LPs are salivating for access to, they're the ones that scale overnight, and there are only so many of those. So that's why I think we're seeing the aggregate amount of net outflows and also the trend line. The thing on the trend line is the only other year in hedge fund history where we had 4 consecutive quarters of net outflows was 2008 to 2009.
Really? That's amazing.
We are probably Q1 2019 was the only other time in hedge fund history we saw 4 consecutive quarters. And that was, and Q1 2019 this year, we had 15 billion of net outflows. We're now at 60 something. So I guarantee you we're now in our 6th quarter of net outflows. That is first time ever in hedge fund history.
Wow, that's amazing. So I don't want to call it the flavor of the month. It's a little too glib, but it's clear that private equity is the shiny new thing. Lots of money seems to be flowing in that direction. Is that who is the beneficiary of the outflows from hedge funds? As if you're an institution and you know your expected returns for equity is going to be 5 or 6% and bonds are yielding less than 2% and alternatives are promising 8, 9, 10%, do these outflows end up going to private equity?
They do, but, interestingly, and it's true that in the last 4 or 5 years, while hedge funds have suffered because their returns have come down, and for most of them, fees have had to readjust or in the process of readjusting, private equity was had the hot hand because rates were low and it was it was easier to buy companies. I think that, I think what we're seeing now is the merging of public and private. You see private equity firms trying to get into the public markets. You see hedge funds developing their private investing expertise. And so I think each one is trying to capitalize upon the other's revenue stream.
That's quite interesting. One of the things I read about you that I thought was pretty amusing, there was a gala that you helped put together earlier this year, and one of the co-producers of the gala was Stevie Cohen of now Point72, and he discussed what a challenge it's been for so many hedge funds, and basically said no one's winning the hedge fund game. There's this recruitment process where people go from one fund to another, and the only one who wins is you. He kind of dragged you a little bit.
No. It was, just to be clear, the gala was in honor of me. I was being honored. So so
it was a little bit of roasting taking place.
It was a little bit of roasting. I think it was, he was introducing me. I was the honoree. So I think it was meant
So it was good nature and
But it's also
because when you read it, it's like, wow, Stevie Cohen's really dragging the lineup. But it's nothing like that.
I don't think it was seen that way. I think his point was, there is a war for talent because there's so little of it, right? There are only, I said it myself, there are only so many people I put in that first bubble of best in class in each asset class. That is true. And you see it with the returns of funds. There are only so many funds that are performing and only so many people within those funds.
P&Ls don't lie.
P&L doesn't lie. That's what I love about this industry. It's real time. It's mark to market. You know where you stand at all times. So that is true. There's an intense competition to attract the best. It is also true we tend to be in the mix of it. But the other thing that's true is as much as there are only so many good people, there are only so many places those people are going to be attracted to. And Steve runs a great shop. Point72 is one of them. Other places like Citadel, Millennium, Davidson Kempner, Golden Tree, there are places that have built something unique and are going to be able to do something special to attract talent and make them more successful because of the very fact that they are at those funds or on those platforms. And that's what creates a symbiotic relationship between talent and the best places that exist and myself. At the end of the day, IDW, has been very deliberate about who we choose to work with. As good as I'd like to think we are, at the end of the day, the people we are dealing with on the talent side, they are very sophisticated. They are very smart. And they're not going to go someplace that isn't a marked step up from where they are today with a pathway that is unique.
We have been speaking with Ilana Weinstein. She is the founder and CEO of the IDW Group, a leading boutique for hedge funds, family offices, and private equity, searching out top talent. If you enjoy this conversation, well, be sure and come back for the podcast extras, where we keep the tape rolling and continue discussing all things hedge fund and alternatives. You can find that at iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever your finer podcasts are sold. We love your comments, feedback, and suggestions. Write to us at mibpodcast@bloomberg.net. Give us a review on Apple iTunes. Check out my weekly column on Bloomberg.com. Follow me on Twitter at Ritholtz. I'm Barry Ritholtz. You're listening to Masters in Business on Bloomberg Radio.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run, mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time, skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class, skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 12-pack of Bird's Eye chicken dippers, now half price, from £2 to just £1. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 27th of January.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now a global news update.
Violent Sunday impeachment trial. I'm John Trout. Police in Kansas City, Missouri say at least 2 people are dead. Upwards of a dozen may have been injured in a shooting outside a bar just before midnight. Patrons were likely celebrating the Kansas City Chiefs' advancement to the Super Bowl. In San Antonio yesterday,
7 people were shot, 2 dead, 5 at local hospitals. That's where we are right now.
Police Chief McManus, 2 officers were shot and killed in Hawaii. Honolulu Police Chief Susan Ballard says Honolulu police had responded to a woman who had been stabbed at a residence. The suspect is still being sought. Whitney Wild is in Richmond, Virginia, where authorities are preparing for violence today at the Capitol.
Virginia Governor Ralph Northam has declared a state of emergency ahead of a rally at the state capitol. Northam says law enforcement believes extremists, including people from outside Virginia, plan to flood Richmond protesting proposed gun control measures.
We're seeing threats of armed confrontation and assault on our capital.
President Trump's legal team calling the impeachment articles poisonous partisanship.
Trump recruiting high-profile defense lawyer Alan Dershowitz to help build his case.
I will be advocating against impeachment of this president based on the constitutional criteria.
House Democrats filing their 111-page trial brief calling, quote, President Trump's conduct the framers' worst nightmare.
There's correspondent Lauren Fox. The Senate trial resumes tomorrow. China has reported a sharp rise in the number of people infected with coronavirus. The outbreak coincides with the country's busiest travel period, as millions board trains and planes for the Lunar New Year holiday. On this, the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, banks and the stock market are closed. I'm John Trout.
Here is some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for health insurance, or if you sign up for a plan that you're just not happy with, you still have a choice. It's called MediShare. It's the affordable alternative to health insurance, and it's worked beautifully for 25 years. They have more than 400,000 members now around the country. MediShare is a Christian healthcare sharing ministry, and over the years, members have shared over $3 billion of each other's medical bills, so they could help share your needs too. And best of all, you could save a lot of money with MediShare. The typical savings for a family is about $500 a month. Your savings could be more or less, but think about what you could do with that extra money every month. You're not stuck with a high-cost health plan. You can join MediShare anytime, so call them today and check it out. Here's the number to find out more, and there's no pressure. They are super easy to talk to. Call 844-91-BIBLE. That's 844-91-BIBLE. 844-91-BIBLE.
He was running late for a flight in the UK, but got stuck in traffic. Jeff McKay reports he not only missed his flight, he's now heading to prison.
Rashidul Islam was trying to catch a flight from Gatwick Airport back in May last year to visit his fiancée in Marrakesh. Stuck in London traffic, he decided to call the airport to try to delay the flight by telling the airline there may be a bomb on the plane. Police did delay the flight by evacuating all 147 passengers on board. Police noticed his cell phone number was the same as the caller who made the bomb threat. Islam claimed he panicked because he was running late. Now Islam has a new destination, a one-way trip to prison for the next 16 months for making a false bomb report. And he's banned from Gatwick Airport for life. I'm Jeff McKay.
A survey by public relations firm Edelman suggests rising income inequality is undermining confidence in capitalism. The report published ahead of the World Economic Forum in Davos. I'm John Trout.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. U.S. financial markets are closed in observance of the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. International markets are trading on this Monday. In midday trading in Europe, the FTSE 100 in London down by 1/3%. The DAX in Germany up by almost 0.1%. The CAC 40 in Paris down by 1/3%. Overnight, the Nikkei closed up 0.2%. And Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index dropped by 0.9%. The S&P 500 index futures are down by a fraction as investors wait for a fresh batch of earnings reports this week. Hong Kong protests continued over the weekend with tear gas fired, 2 plainclothes police officers beaten, and 8 people arrested for possession of batons, hammers, or spanners. Hong Kong International Airport's passenger numbers fell for the first time in a decade last year as months of anti-government protests deterred people from coming to the city. Bloomberg's Stephen Engel in Hong Kong reports that months of protests are taking a toll.
Many economists we've spoken to, including at Bloomberg Intelligence, expect the wave of joblessness to rise steadily in 2020 as the retail sector, logistics, trade, etc. start to feel the brunt of now 7 months of protests.
The International Monetary Fund predicted the world economy will strengthen in 2020, albeit at a slightly slower pace than previously anticipated, amid threats related to trade and tensions in the Middle East. The IMF says global growth will accelerate to 3.3% from 2.9% in 2019, marking the first pickup in 3 years. President Donald Trump championed the China trade deal and passage of the USMCA at a farm convention Sunday in Austin, Texas, saying the two momentous trade deals we completed last week are just the beginning of a really incredible story. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week from Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, I'm Jason Kelly.
And I'm Carol Masser. Welcome to the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week. Another very busy week on the corporate front, and certainly when it came to news out of Washington, Jason.
Absolutely. We had trade, we had impeachment, we had more details about how you might need to hire mercenaries to smuggle yourself out in a box if you don't think you're going to get a fair trial in Japan.
Got to say, that's one of my favorite stories. We really get into the details of how Carlos Ghosn, his greatest escape from Tokyo. And we also get into, because I feel like this story has gotten hidden, about the legal implications and the legal issues still facing Mr. Ghosn.
Plus, you mentioned trade and impeachment and politics. We caught up with both Blackstone's Steve Schwartzman. He was in the room when the trade deal was signed, and you caught up with New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy about the state of the state and the state of politics.
We did indeed. Plus, Apollo's greed. It is this week's cover story. It's a story that really hasn't been told, but our team, they got the interview with Leon Black.
First, to the big story of the week.
So China has made substantial and enforceable commitments regarding the protection of American ideas, trade secrets, patents, and trademarks. China has also pledged firm action to confront pirated and counterfeit goods, which is a big problem for many of the people in the room.
And that was President Trump after the U.S. and China signed that phase one of the trade deal. A lot of pomp and circumstance down in Washington, a full room, the president name-checking a lot of his friends there in the audience.
Let's get more on the economics of the trade deal. Let's bring in Sean Donnan in D.C. with his story on how now comes the hard part. After the handshake, we've seen the photo ops. This is the tough part. Why is it so hard, Sean?
President Trump is not the first president to make a deal with China. In fact, he referenced that when he was signing this, saying that he was righting the wrongs of the past, righting the issues that his predecessors had not addressed in terms of dealing with China. President Clinton, of course, brought China into the WTO. George W. Bush had his own dealings with China. So did Barack Obama, who not only had a constant economic dialogue with China, but also was looking for his own trade deals to try and deal with the threat of China that was the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The common thread through all of this has been that the consensus here in Washington certainly is that China just hasn't lived up to its promises in these past deals. And that's where the China moment is for Donald Trump right now. He's got his deal. Now will China live up to it?
And so what does enforcement look like, Sean? What does it look like on the ground, and where does the rubber meet the road here?
Right. So the thing that the administration says is very different about this deal, and the reason they think they can get China to live up to its commitments, is this enforcement mechanism that's in there. Essentially, it sets the stage for if the U.S. has any complaints or any inkling that China isn't living up to the deal. There's this kind of 90-day process of consultations at the end of which you can whack the Chinese with tariffs if you choose to. That's good. That seems to be a mechanism that could work. But it's also an unwinding of the kind of global system that was set up in the 1990s, and that's essentially the World Trade Organization, which was set up to be a neutral arbiter in disputes like this. And the Trump administration is just going around that. And that has big consequences for everyone else in the world, because it means that that's going to reduce the credibility of the WTO and its ability to keep the peace in global trade at a time when the Trump administration is already undermining it by failing to appoint or blocking the appointment of new judges. So there's big consequences for not just the U.S. and China in terms of trying to get China to live up to this deal, but also for the rest of the world and global trade. You know, I mean, the whole idea of the WTO is to avoid trade wars. Donald Trump's gone down the path of trade wars, and now he's promising more trade wars to try and enforce deals, essentially, if that's if that becomes the issue.
And that's Sean Donnan, senior trade reporter for Bloomberg. Carol, let's turn now from trade to the 2020 presidential campaign.
Here's Josh Green with a story on the terminal and online on how Bernie Sanders is poised for an upset. You know, Josh, it does seem Bernie is out there to win this one. What's different about the 2016 presidential race and his run to get the nomination versus today? And can he win?
Bernie Sanders, who was all but forgotten about 3 months after he suffered a heart attack, is in first place in the race in Iowa. And yet I still think there's a sense in Washington and on Wall Street that there's no way Bernie can possibly win. So what I do in the magazine this week is do a deep dive into Sanders and look at what is different about his race this time around. The main thing is he's running to win. Last time around when he was running against Hillary Clinton, he was in the race, I think, more to make a point. But the key takeaway here is that Bernie is playing to win, and he is actually in position to be able to do so.
And Josh, tell us about that Warren v. Sanders battle that is shaping up.
While I was out there in Iowa, Politico reported that Bernie's campaign had been giving its surrogates talking points, telling them to tell voters to attack Elizabeth Warren as an elitist and somebody who couldn't unify the party and beat Donald Trump. That is a harsh attack from someone supposed to be an ally. The story went public, and it looks like in retaliation, Warren's camp leaked that in a private meeting between the two of them at the beginning of this cycle, Sanders had said to Warren, I don't think a woman can win this race. Now, none of this was ever spoken of. It only came to light a few days before this past debate, and it set off a firestorm, as you might expect, with the political press out there putting pressure on Warren to say, is this true? Well, after about a day of being quiet, Warren put out a public statement. It was like pouring gasoline on a fire.
Josh, thanks so much. That's Bloomberg's Josh Green. He's been following the comings and goings of the presidential hopefuls, certainly the Democrats. And I think this one's he focused, remember last year, Josh focused on Elizabeth Warren, that great story. But it's interesting to see how there's a lot of attention, and for good reason, being paid to Bernie Sanders.
Well, and the clash between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren seems to be one of the most compelling storylines out there right now.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, more details emerging on the daring escape of former Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn. It isn't easy, Jason, but if you've got the means, you can probably get out of a situation.
Get out of just about anywhere if you got the right mercenaries. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. The housing market is especially mortgage rate sensitive right now. That's according to Prashant Gopal. He's a reporter for Bloomberg News.
What might seem like small increases and decreases have a magnified effect, and that's because there's a shortage of housing in America, especially on the lower end, and so Americans are facing an affordability crisis in much of the country. So when rates fall, as they have this year, they jump on it and buy houses, and that drives up prices, and for a dwindling supply of properties, so you end up with higher prices.
And as mortgage rates stayed relatively low, housing starts surged last month. Home builder sentiment is also high as builders enjoy a jump in prospective buyers. And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and
Are you ready, Stace?
To go down the giant flume?
Ready to speed down the flume, spin round the crazy rapids, and then take on that amazing wave pool?
Are we right behind you?
There'll be no hanging about on this Butlins trip, Stace. We are going to swim until we're wrinkly.
As long as you're not too tired for the Little Mermaid show tonight.
After a day in the pool, I'll practically be a mermaid. Bring it on.
The Butlins January sale is now on. You can save up to 40% on all family brakes. Book online now. Are you ready to Butlins?
On the goal line, Martin scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
The move, and a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
You know, I feel like this Carlos Ghosn story, Carol, every time we think, wow, that's the most interesting thing I've heard, or what a twist, or
not.
what a great detail.
No, it's not.
It is not. And thanks to some stellar reporting from Matt Campbell, there's just a constant stream of new information. He led a team that put together a really nice piece. It's in this week's magazine on the Bloomberg Terminal and on Bloomberg.com today. Matt joins us on the phone from Beirut. He's still on the ground on the Ghosn story, and Joel Weber, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week, is here with us in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So, Matt, I got to ask you, especially since you have the perspective of really being in this story, what's the thing in this story about the escape itself that you really just zero in on as Carol Massar would say, whoa moment?
Well, I think there's quite a lot to say wow about in this story. I'm interested in all the scenarios that were examined to get Carlos Ghosn out of Japan. There's some discussion of that in this piece which was published. Notably, there was some discussion of actually buying a cargo ship and sneaking him onto it, though that was rejected as too complicated. And in the end, they did get to this very dramatic private jet escape that we now know a little bit more about.
Which, this to me, and the wonder of this story, it's like all these little dribs and drabs that have come out over the last week and change. Actually, ever since the story really broke at the beginning of the year, we've all been captivated by it. Part of what made this be, I think, this epic part 3 of this story that Matt's been kind of shepherding is this inside the plan of how to get somebody out of the country, how to extract someone. And it's a very movie-esque, but the reason it can be movie-esque is because of real reporting. And Matt, can you kind of walk us through how the story opens?
Well, so the story opens with a security contractor in Asia, someone who does this kind of thing, escorting VIPs, as protecting cargoes. He gets a call a few months ago from someone he knows who is looking to hire for a job in Japan, looking particularly to escort someone out of the country and looking for operatives with East Asian faces particularly. And the security contractor was sort of non-committal, and no one really came to mind, and he never really thought of it again. So, of course, he saw the news along with the rest of the world on New Year's Eve.
And that's when you connect the dots. And what one of the things that I've been kind of captivated by in this is obviously Carlos Ghosn had the means to actually fund something like this. But what would it go down for? What does this service actually cost someone?
Well, that's a very good question. One estimate that I've heard was $15 million, which when I first heard it sounded insanely high. But the person who was providing that estimate to me then took me through the math. And one thing that you have to add at every point in that calculation is, for lack of a better term, a risk premium. Right. This is flagrantly illegal. Everyone involved could be exposed to arrest, obviously. And people need to be compensated for that kind of risk-taking.
Yeah, and when you say everyone, we've actually got some names. You've got a Michael Taylor, and then you've got a buddy of Michael Taylor. I mean, we've got names on the individuals who are believed to have helped Carlos Ghosn get out of Japan.
That's right. So far, just two names. Michael Taylor being the leader of the group, a very interesting guy with a somewhat checkered history. Former Green Beret, very experienced special forces operator, ended up in the private security business, but actually ended up going to jail in the mid-2010s over federal charges to do with allegedly bribing his way to a contract in Afghanistan. So really someone who's operated in some gray areas and pulled off this amazing coup on behalf of Carlos Ghosn.
So, Matt, I mentioned earlier that this is sort of the part 3 in the magazine of a Carlos Ghosn trilogy that you've basically been steering from the moment that Japanese officials basically arrested him on a tarmac a year and change ago. So what have you learned, and what is this escape? What, put it all in context. What does it mean for people to know?
Well, I think the big thing here is that he has now turned the tables. Over the last year, he seemed pretty helpless. This real titan of business, this very respected corporate figure, was suddenly just completely at the mercy of the Japanese justice system, and none of the advantages he had, money, connections, access to the media, whatever, it didn't seem to count for anything. And it was really a tale of a guy kind of alone, kind of abandoned, and facing a pretty grim fate. That's now completely changed. He has gotten out of the threat of being sent to a Japanese prison, though he's certainly not out of the woods yet, as we discussed in the story.
What? Right. And I want to end on that note, Matt, if we can. I mean, not out of the woods because he's essentially, without overstating it, sort of a different type of prisoner at this point. By some accounts, he's not free to go in any sense, right?
Well, he is, Jason, certainly free to live here in Lebanon.
Right.
At least as far as we know, there is a judicial proceeding that is going to run its course here, but it's very unlikely he will be extradited. So he's fine to be here for now. He certainly can't travel anywhere except perhaps to France, where he's also a citizen. And the other thing is, his reputation has not yet been rehabilitated, and I think if he entertains thoughts of a comeback, which he very well might, there's a long way to go to that.
And I'm just going to say, as you so rightfully include in your story, it's another case of the winner-take-all in the game of 21st century capitalism. If you got money and means, you can get yourself out, Matt, just quickly.
Indeed, yeah. Well, it turns out that, we were very surprised in Japan that he couldn't beat the system, but he was able to exit the system, which is not something that most criminal defendants do.
It's the other option. Go way outside the box.
If you can't beat the system, just change the system altogether.
Go in a box to go way outside the box.
Exactly. You got to get in the box.
That's Bloomberg reporter Matthew Campbell and Business Week editor-in-chief Joel Weber. Jason, this story just gets more and more interesting, and I've got to take my hat off to our team here at Bloomberg, who has done great investigative journalism and is really getting to the details, the names of the individuals behind that great escape of Carlos Ghosn and how it all came down.
Well, absolutely. And as you continue to listen to Bloomberg Business Week, you're going to hear the next part of the story to focus on the legal implications for Carlos Ghosn. The short version, it ain't over.
No, not even close. This is Bloomberg.
"25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Look at that. A riveting quest. A glorious opportunity. A scratch card. Yet he remains unfazed by the challenge, wavering at nothing.
Miss, please keep it down. We're in the quiet area.
Sorry. Here we are. The moment of truth. As he reaches...
Instant excitement with scratch cards from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 12-pack of Bird's Eye chicken dippers, now half price, from £2 to just £1. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 27th of January.
But one day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
From his 1968 I Have a Dream speech, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., 20 years later, the Martin Luther King Jr. National Holiday was declared. Commemorations are taking place across the country. Many businesses are closed. Today, King was assassinated in 1968. The impeachment trial of President Trump will resume tomorrow and may start with a fight over the ground rules. Trump's lawyers assert that the charges against him are invalid. Democrats say Trump abused his power and obstructed Congress over his pressure on Ukraine for political help. The president denies any wrongdoing. I'm John Trout.
And
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. This newscast is brought to you by SEI. Today's competitive marketplace requires asset managers to become more operationally adept. See how you can transform your business with SEI's global platform at SEIC.com/IMS. The International Monetary Fund predicted the world economy will strengthen in 2020, but at a slightly slower pace than they previously estimated, citing threats related to trade and tensions in the Middle East. The IMF said global growth will accelerate to 3.3% from 2.9% in 2019, marking the first pickup in 3 years. The 3.3% forecast is down from its October figure. Philip Hildebrand, vice chairman at BlackRock, looks for global growth in 2020, driven by central bank monetary policy.
I think globally the big story is this extraordinary pivot by central banks in 2019. 63 central banks eased monetary policy. So this gives a real lift. You can see this in financial conditions. They're very easy. Judging by looking at financial conditions, we should see growth edging up.
Trading volume is light in international markets as U.S. exchanges are closed for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. European shares are mostly lower, and Asia shares finished mixed. The FTSE 100 in London is down 0.4%. The DAX in Germany is up 0.1%. The CAC 40 in Paris down 0.33%. In Asia, the Nikkei finished 0.2% higher in Monday trading. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong was off 0.9%. A pneumonia outbreak in central China has widened, with more than 200 people now diagnosed with the new SARS-like virus. As health experts say, there's now evidence that the illness is spreading from person to person. The number of cases in China rose over the weekend. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
It is now approximately 3 weeks since Carlos Ghosn, the ousted head of Nissan and Renault, escaped from Japan. And while we're all obsessed, Jason, easily with the Hollywood-like feel of this story, real story, there are still something we can't forget, and that's the legal side of this story. A lot of questions still.
Absolutely. And we've talked a lot about, as you say, the escape, the dramatic, sort of in the box, literally, like getting to Lebanon. But what happens from here from a legal perspective? That's what we really want to dig into now. Greg Farrell is here with us. He has unpacked this in a way that few have and is here to provide some historical perspective. As you look at this, what are the key legal issues here?
The case against Ghosn is not like a lot of cases brought against CEOs in the United States, where it's a clear case of either insider trading or accounting fraud in order to goose up earnings so that you can get your bonus, the Enron stuff that we all remember from 15, 20 years ago. The case against Ghosn is unusual insofar as it's he's been accused of helping himself to more money than he deserved, or somehow finagling a way to get the board to approve, or unbeknownst to the board, and even bigger pay packages than he was entitled to, which is uncommon. It's seen rarely here. Basically, to my mind, it brought back the case against former Tyco CEO Dennis Kozlowski and his CFO, brought not by the federal government, but by the Manhattan District Attorney Bob Morgenthau back in the 04-05 era. And that was kind of a messy case. It was not clear. They went after him on books and records issues, etc., but it did not have that clear resonance that an accounting fraud, a securities fraud case has. Tyco shareholders were not really burned by this. Yes, Kozlowski helped himself to more money than the board had approved, but unlike Enron, unlike HealthSouth, unlike some of these other WorldCom, Tyco was a real profitable company and his shareholders were doing well. So this falls into that category. Ghosn was accused of helping himself to more than he deserved and basically parlaying his position to enrich himself. Another thing that was missing from, Morgenthau's case against Tyco, but clearly present here, is the plan, and Carlos Ghosn referred to this in his press conference last week, to basically fold Nissan into a wider global automotive group that would basically, remove the essential Japanese element from it, or make it less of a Japanese champion brand that it had been. And, I think he's actually got a point there, that this is something that didn't go over well.
But it was in the works.
It was in the works. It was in the works. It's more than a coincidence, I think, that this very aggressive regulatory legal action and prosecution of Ghosn took place at a time when Nissan was, in fact, drifting towards becoming an international brand and less of a Japanese brand.
What's interesting, I want to go back to what you said of, perhaps Carlos Ghosn helping himself to more than he was allowed. Is that a simple legal case to figure out? In other words, do you just go back to the employment contracts and here's what they say, you weren't allowed to have this house, or so on and so forth? Or when it comes to this kind of things, because I could certainly see with a board that's really happy with its CEO, and Carlos Ghosn was lauded as this incredible auto executive in the industry and really globally as an executive. And I do wonder whether it's like, oh yeah, we like him, yeah, he can have that, or he can do this. Like, how do you go about legally proving it? What's required? Is there a lot of wiggle room?
Carol, you've made a very good point here, and that is he was a superstar CEO by the time this all unfolded a little more than a year ago. And as he pointed out in his press conference last week, somewhere near 20 books have been written, or case studies in business schools about his phenomenal success.
We would interview him saying, what a great executive.
Yes,
everyone
absolutely.
respects him.
But this is at the far end of a 20-year reign. Certainly, when you have that much success over a period of time, there are certain realities that happen. We've seen it here in the U.S. with very powerful, CEOs who develop sort of there's a hero worship. And after a while, technically, all boards of directors are independent, but over a particular 20-year period where new board members come on, et cetera, after a while, the board becomes, if not a wholly owned subsidiary, far less of an independent watchdog than what shareholder activists would like us to have. There becomes a very comfortable relationship between the board and the CEO because everybody's doing well. Why rock the boat? And in that gray area is whether or not Ghosn is entitled to this. The board. So there'd be different claims if this ever went to trial that the board was not aware that he was paying himself that. Ghosn could say, no, I told them this, or they knew that, or we had a discussion at the end of the last board meeting where I said, I'd be interested in this.
The money went through and somebody okayed it.
Yes, exactly.
It was a transaction.
And there are lawyers for every board meeting and board minutes, et cetera. So these are not like secret meetings that happen and people forget. That is a very gray area.
And that's Greg Farrell, one of the legal eagles here at Bloomberg. And what I loved about his conversation was he put it in context, historical context. He's followed everything from Enron to Tyco, and those connections that he made to the Dennis Kozlowski story, I thought were fascinating.
I also think it was funny that in starting to talk with him, he's like, wait, I had to remember that there were charges. What were the charges specifically against Carlos Ghosn? So he gets into the particulars. So obviously a story that continues to evolve. It isn't over, as you said.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, a profile of Leon Black, founder of Apollo Global Management, one of the most influential voices and names on Wall Street.
And powerful, and maybe a little bit scary. This is Bloomberg.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it up. Add a boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run.
Mix it. Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
10 years ago, the book The New Jim Crow helped ignite a movement against mass incarceration. This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with the author, Michelle Alexander.
Millions of people have been relegated to a permanent second-class status. It wasn't a message people were eager to hear, but I think it is today easier to see.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three, it's up and in!
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Bloomberg Radio. A reminder, Michael Bloomberg, a Democratic presidential candidate, is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, parent of Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update. Now the news.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
From his 1968 I Have a Dream speech, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., 20 years later, the Martin Luther King Jr. National Holiday was declared. Commemorations are taking place across the country. Many businesses are closed today. King was assassinated in 1968. The impeachment trial of President Trump will resume tomorrow and may start with a fight over the ground rules. Trump's lawyers assert that the charges against him are invalid. Democrats say Trump abused his power and obstructed Congress over his pressure on Ukraine for political help. The president denies any wrongdoing. I'm John Trout.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Vassar and Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
Even if you don't know Apollo Management, you probably know some of the company's targets, right, Jason? We're talking about Harrah's Casinos, Claire's Jewelry Stores, Linen and Things. This brings us to the cover story this week.
It does, and it's really an unbelievable story that's never been told. Leon Black, one of the key figures in the world of finance, in the world of philanthropy, and certainly in the world of private equity. Caleb Melby and Heather Perlberg wrote the story. Caleb's here with us in New York City. Leon Black, where to begin? Where did you begin?
Indeed. Yeah, Heather and I, it took us months to put this together. And we approached it in the summer being like, here's this guy. He was in the news at the time because of his affiliations with Jeffrey Epstein. And like, his name was in headlines everywhere, and it was suddenly of much broader interest to a much broader group of people. And we were like, do people know who he is? Like, what his story is? The fact that he's been at like all the key junctures in like American financial history for like half a century. So we went and, you know, we started talking to people all the way back to the 1970s about Leon, his story, how he came to be one of the most powerful and ruthless people in American finance.
And we do want to take that step back. I mean, who is he today? I mean, he is, when it comes to private equity and investors, I mean, big deal, but someone who's been very quiet.
Yes. Yeah, he is in private equity. There's some people who you can think of as kind of ambassadors for that line of work, right? Probably Steve Schwartzman, chief among them. Leon Black has not shouldered that responsibility to tell the industry's story or anything like that. He's very adverse to the press, and we learned about why when we talked to him. But yeah, Apollo Global Management now has $320 billion under management. That's a figure that's grown sixfold in the last decade. He wants to get it up to 600 in the decade after this one. And he's worth almost $10 billion now. He's chairman of the Museum of Modern Art.
Which in I feel like New York society culture, if you want to be the head of a cultural institution in the world, that's a big one. That's a coveted position.
Yeah, I've kind of been thinking about it as like the Iron Throne for Game of Thrones fans, for like the royal houses of Manhattan, for sure. And yeah, mostly he's done that, yeah, much less in the public eye than his contemporaries. And Apollo also has a reputation across the street, across the realm of finance for playing harder ball than some of his contemporaries as well.
And so let's talk about some of those junctures going back through history for Leon Black. And one of the most notable is his time at Drexel Burnham Lambert, at the foot, at the side, however you want to characterize it, of Michael Milken. You know, a definitive time in American finance, as you say. Remind us why Drexel is so important.
Well, he learned under Michael Milken, and he also served as banker to some of the most important corporate raiders of the 1980s. He was banking for Henry Kravis. He was banking for Carl Icahn, who would become something of a mentor. They'd go on vacations together, play poker together. Of course, Drexel is one of the most famous, low points, you can probably say, in Wall Street financial history with the trial of Michael Milken, its bankruptcy, and everything else. But also, with Time Heals All Wounds, Michael Milken, Leon Black, a lot of these guys, they're now, that's all in the past, and they've risen to become kind of like lord and master of Wall Street today.
And the Drexel part of the story, I think, is really important because its success in essentially creating the junk bond, obviously, and the junk bond market is critical for what comes next and what comes next for Leon Black. But also, and you alluded to this, the dissolution of Drexel, the bankruptcy, makes Apollo possible.
Absolutely. So when Leon first strikes out on his own right around 1990, it's all with like Drexel survivors, essentially. And at the same time, there's this credit crunch in the economy, and all of the companies that had been bought or were sitting on piles of high yield debt were now in trouble. And a lot of that debt was issued by Drexel, sometimes by Leon himself. He knows which are the good companies, which are the bad companies, right. And now all of a sudden they're all struggling, and the game is no longer mergers, acquisitions, LBOs. It's about buying that distressed debt and using it to maneuver to take over these companies. And he's had a front row seat as that debt was being issued, and now he forms what's actually called Lion Advisors at first, but then later becomes Apollo, to go in, working with backing from Credit Lyonnais, a French bank, to really start to rifle through these distressed companies. And Apollo's really big value add is that they're going for the ones that are so distressed that his competitors, your Kravises, your Icons, are not touching them. And he's going in there, and he and his team are willing to, go through the restructuring battles, go through the bankruptcy battles, to try to make a profit off these companies.
And I do wonder too, right, he's been at the right place at the right time and kind of understanding the marketplace. But I also do wonder, Caleb, that, he has kind of done a service in terms of going after some of those companies that maybe some of the other private equity firms weren't interested in.
Sure. Yeah. He would argue that they are the truest value investors in private equity, right? That the way they think about value is you find a distressed situation that you are uniquely capable of heading into and turning around, and that's going to lower your downside risk because you're buying it for so cheap, and hopefully also boosting your chances of return later on.
And one of the things that Apollo has notably done, and with full permission from their investors, is they have had the ability to invest all around a company in many ways, not just buying equity, not just doing sort of a plain vanilla leverage buyout, but they're buying credit. Often they find themselves at different times on different sides of a deal, right?
Absolutely. And that's true for Apollo itself. And it's true for Leon as a person too. So yeah, he worked with companies and executives while he was issuing the debt at Drexel, then at Apollo, buying into those companies, as you say, multiple different ways, through equity, through debt. And then he continues to run into the same people all throughout the next few decades. He's sometimes competing, as he would later do with Icon, for control of a company, or partnering with them.
So, okay, I think what's interesting about this story, there's so much, because you do go into family history and so on. What I also think is just novel is that you actually you guys sat down and talked with Leon Black. This is someone who doesn't give interviews. Tell us a little bit about the experience and what you got from him.
Yeah, so Heather and I got to go sit down with Leon at his office at 9 West 57th Street. Something that struck me, it's kind of a joke in financial journalism. Knockout views of Central Park is a phrase that gets dropped into a lot of stories. This was the most stunning view of Central Park I have ever seen. Like, the whole park splayed out like a bocce ball court right in front of you. Truly the most amazing views I've seen in a Wall Street office reporting here. But he was incredibly clever, funny, very obviously intelligent, and was very interested in trying to communicate to us that he felt his company was misunderstood.
That's the first line of your story.
Yes, yeah.
Which is exactly what you said, that the most feared man in the most aggressive realm of finance, he wants to know why he's been misunderstood.
Right. And there's a few things at play there. One, we deal with this idea of risk and who bears risk in any private equity deal and who bears risk in a Leon Black deal specifically. And he makes a very good point that, well, Claire's or Linens and things or whatever may be a distressed asset that appears risky. Of course, the way Apollo goes about it does not mean Apollo itself or Apollo's investors are bearing a lot of risk, right? You put a little equity in, you get a lot of debt, shift that risk to your creditors, and then of course to the target company itself. And we came with a lot of questions, but that was the thing that really animated him and really seemed to both excite and aggravate him in a way that I found surprising.
The notion of risk and the misunderstanding?
Yeah, the misunderstanding of him and his company. And yeah, as we said, a part of that is because he has not proactively told his story in a way that a lot of his contemporaries do. And when I was talking to other people around the company, they'll say, okay, Caesars Casinos, something like that, there's only one Apollo, and there's 24 creditors who all hate how Apollo's going about their line of work there, right? So they feel like there's a definitional, numeric sort of imbalance in how their story gets told.
That's Caleb Melby. He and Heather Perlberg did this cover story, Jason, and what's wonderful about it is they spent a long time on it. There's so many details about the man, his background, his family, and really how he got to where he is today. And what's fascinating, too, is, and we talked about it with Caleb, is that they actually sat down with Leon Black, and this is not something that Mr. Black does often.
The insights that they got into him, into the firm, into the implications of the business, both there at Apollo and in the broader private equity world, totally fascinating. We should mention you can get all of our conversation with Caleb Melby. It takes you even deeper into the story. It's our Business Week Extra podcast this week, so download that wherever you get your podcast. And that wraps up the first hour of the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week from Bloomberg Radio. I'm Jason Kelly.
And I'm Carol Masser. Plenty coming up in our next hour, including another deep dive into another company, Bumble. It's the second most popular dating app. We get into how it was created and really the individual behind it and the culture of the company.
Talk about a complicated story in many ways, and also another firm, sort of like Apollo, where the firm, the company, really reflects the personality of the founder. Also, on the news, we caught up with Blackstone Group CEO, co-founder and chairman Steve Schwartzman. He was in the room when that trade deal was signed. He tells us what it may mean for his business. Plus,
we also got an idea of what trade means for one particular state. We're talking about the state of New Jersey. I caught up with Governor Phil Murphy. We talked about trade. We also talked about the millionaire's tax. He's on quite a mission to do that. We also talked about what he is doing to create jobs within his state. So a really deep conversation.
Plus, the rich find it's not that easy to own a greenhouse. Go figure. That's in our Pursuit section.
Who knew? This is Bloomberg.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run.
Mix it. Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now a global news update.
Gun rights rally, Schiff cries foul. I'm John Trout. Thousands of people are gathered in Richmond, Virginia in a show of force to promote Second Amendment rights. This man outside the Capitol supports gun ownership, believing it's his divine right.
Free men don't need permission, do they? No. What are we guaranteed this by? The Second Amendment and God.
The impeachment